The young manor Edward sits sitting alone in the trembling carriage, looking out the window as the landscape rushes by. He wears his usual cloak, a solitary figure on the way to a new destination. The rhythmic clinking quiets as the train approaches the station. With firm steps, he descends onto the stone platform. The journey by train has ended. He freezes for a moment, barely, with a wistful smile touching his lips while he surveys the new landscapes. For some reason, this place resonates with nostalgia. Standing on the embankment by the sea, he lets the wind tug his cloak around. The sea breeze, he thinks, is a pleasant and long-awaited sensation. His destination is a remote place, the kingdom of Estrada, a small country nestled behind a wild mountain range at the far southern tip of the Don continent, where they sometimes say there is land at the edge. When he walks through the city, suddenly a strange sound rings out, or maybe it's just a feeling of a foreign presence. He freezes as if rooted to the spot. Alertness covers him instantly. Just a moment ago, he admired the quiet beauty of the town, stone bridges arched over calm canals. He had not felt such a peaceful pause for a long time. The disturbance is raised by a young man approaching him from behind. The tone is light but inquisitive. He asks if Oren is not a local and what brought him to such a remote wilderness. Oren turns around and confirms, yes, he is a guest. He says he arrived from Gyades. Next, the young man clarifies why he came. Oren calmly replies, he resigned from his position at the school and came to Estrada for work. He walks through the bustling port town, gazing at the lively trades, the very ones that truly profit from Estrada's coastal location. And for someone currently unemployed, the life of a fisherman suddenly seems alluring. But fishing is not his goal, he recalls. In fact, he came here to meet the king who once gave him one request. The light flashes and he turns on storage magic to hide the bag. Inside, he scolds himself for the bad habit, wasting recklessly. He took another hook before he could reach the capital. His detour led to a dead end. He could take the train again, but then he would be left completely without money. So now he stands and thinks about what to do next. Against the backdrop of the city noise, his gaze catches on a sign above the door with a stylized emblem resembling a dragon. He recognizes it moment by moment, the guilt of an adventurer. Years of his life surface in his mind. Battles with monsters, treasure hunts, and he honestly admits to himself that he has always fallen in love with exactly such a life. Life and time seem to wink. He understands that if he completes a few quests, he might be able to get some money for a short term, so he decides he will just take a look inside. The doors creak open and before him unfolds the interior of the guild. Various visitors sit at wooden tables, drinking and talking as if it were an ordinary evening. He steps over the threshold, passes by seated adventurers, and step by step moves deeper into the establishment. As soon as he approaches the reception desk, a young woman with a pleasant smile stops him. She hands him a booklet with a message that reading the instructions is mandatory for newcomers, and, to his surprise, it really is. He immerses himself in the guild manual and learns. To participate in quests, a license is required. While he ponders these seemingly simple requirements, a man with a condescending smile approaches him and mockingly asks if he can even read. The man leans back in his chair, scrutinizes Orina, and notices that he does not recognize him. He immediately concludes, a newcomer, and disdainfully calls him an old rookie. A loud, sharp metallic sound and the bandit draws a knife. He declares that he intends either to teach or to cut down the laws of this city, so the nearest reception attendant freezes in fear. He presses the blade to Orina's back and demands that he hand over all the cash for the registration fee. Orina remains silent and motionless, not a single facial feature betrays him, while the receptionist stiffens completely. Without pause, he is pulled away from the threat. He glances over his shoulder, his voice is calm. Unhurried, he calmly asks the bandit what he is trying to do. The thief leans closer and his voice spreads in a low growl. He warns Oren, as soon as he tries to draw his weapon himself, it will all be over. Suddenly, a gigantic, invisible pressure crashes down on the threat. The thug is momentarily pressed to the ground and forced to his knees. He struggles, but the horror gradually sets in. He cannot move from the spot. Oren looks down from above without any emotion and asks if that is all he has after so much show of manliness. The gangster, cursing foully, remains pinned to the floor and seemingly calmly analyzes his failed attack. He says, that man's step was weak, that's why he only gave 15 points. Suddenly and smoothly he turns around, then drives his elbow into the mercenary's nape. The latter only manages a hoarse cry and chokes. Pain. One blow instantly incapacitates the thug. His body heavily collapses to the floor. Oren looks at the defeated man and mentally notes the annoyance. Such a low-level attack was enough to break the fight. Passers-by whisper in disbelief. They are shocked that the thief Dritten was taken down with one blow. They will wonder who this incredibly strong newcomer is, while Oren himself inside cannot understand how such a person managed to survive in adventures for any length of time. The noise draws unwanted attention. The knight captain bursts through the door, his men on either side, and demands to know what exactly caused this commotion. His gaze immediately stops at the scene. The subdued thug crumpled by the wall, a crack runs from the blow, and Oren stands nearby, calm as if nothing happened. Bai approaches the guild receptionist's eyes and says that the situation is already sick to the bone. He looks at Oren and asks if it is his doing and will demand explanations. The explanation does not even begin. Before you can answer, the receptionist on duty loudly interrupts the conversation, asks the night guest to give or take a pause, and swears that he was only being persecuted. The captain cuts her off mid-word and declares that he is taking control of the situation. One of the subordinates tries to report that he has already interrogated that man, but the captain's attention is focused only on resolving the commotion. Against the tension, Oren's face suddenly changes. Recognition flashes in his eyes. He addresses one of the knights. Grover. So much time has passed. Grover Hurston is completely shocked. Before him is his former professor. The other knights react confusedly, seeing their captain talk to the newcomer as if by name. Understanding disperses at night in waves. Someone shouts with delight and addresses the sage. Oren, however, looks uncertain because of this title and, modestly objecting, says that he is not that important. Two other knights begin to negotiate with each other and gather everything together. One calls him Oren Edwards, the former mentor of their captain. The other nods, recalls, and recognizes this is the legendary leader Golden General. Overcoming a wave of emotions, Grover Hurston steps forward and admits how sincerely happy he is to see his mentor again, something he did not expect at all in such a place. Then his voice changes as he says things are going badly, and a touched Oren asks what exactly he means. Calmly explains his intentions to the Splash Knight, and Oren explains he has already left teaching and is thinking of moving to this country. His former student Grover is overwhelmed with joy at this prospect and declares that this is great news for the citizens of Australia. The enthusiastic impulse of Grover quickly fades with an apology for losing his composure, but Grover waves it off and smiles faintly, as if to say it was just an honest reaction. The young knight remains confused and mumbles his own name, revealing himself aloud. Approaching, Grover catches his breath and Captain Haig moves toward Oren, apologizing for the trouble. He assures Oren has no reason to worry about this. He confirms guild members testified that the weapon was taken by the gangster Dritten himself. As soon as everything was settled, Oren looks up and again addresses his former student, noting how impressively he has strengthened. But Grover still finds no peace. He admits he cannot understand why Geodo's academy let go of a person like Oren, and adds that something troubling is happening at the academy and in the country. Leaning forward, the young knight loudly voices his main suspicion. He directly asks Oren if he believes that the new head of the school is the source of this. The problem with a gloomy, stern expression on the face, or maybe it just confirms that most likely that is exactly how it is. At the very heart of the growing anxiety stands Geode's royal magic sword. The academy is a majestic, steadfast building, one of the most prestigious educational institutions on the entire continent. It is a school created to forge the future of the nation. For Oren, it was also his former Joba place where he taught, and memories of his time there surface. Students impatiently rush at him through the corridors and address him as Professor Oren. One young man asks for a sparring match and a young woman wants to ask a question. He calmly agrees to both, proof that he knew how to be approachable as a teacher. He recalled his time as a professor. That period he remembered as remarkably smooth, without friction or unnecessary hesitation. The sea voyage speech was cut short. The quiet memory was interrupted just as an assistant approached him. Professor Oren, the man said, the director is calling you. You were brought before Director Rose Arnalord. With a stern face, she addressed you by your full name or by the surname Edwards. Do you know why you were called here? Here you cannot stand completely alone before her in this endless silence. Whether Nate Hall, and still you won't confess. The headmaster repeated his name. The tone broke as if she did not believe that he Her composure cracked. "You can't even understand something so simple," she snorted contemptuously. "Is such helplessness fitting for someone called a sage?" Appointing, despite the offense, he remained composed. "Sorry," he said evenly, without trembling, "then explain to this fool why I called here." The director leaned closer and her gaze narrowed at a complete accusation. "You came to explain how you wronged my son Kyle." The very name unsettled Oren. For a moment his expression barely changed as he swallowed what he heard. At this accusation, his thoughts whirled back 3 months ago. Then a troublemaker named Kyle Arnalord came to the class. He remembered how the principal introduced her son, relying on Oren to treat him well. Oren had no idea why the honors student was assigned to him, remembering that Kyle's late father, the principal's husband, was a flawless hero who, having already won the war, Oren continued to think, and suddenly everything fell into place. The director desperately wanted Kyle to be called a hero, like his late father. She probably hoped he would rise to the top of the Royal Knights, but the war and dead-end the path to heroism vanished. To achieve this status now, Kyle would need the highest grades. Whatever the reality was, facing it and his own principles, Oren made his decision. Possible points? He further breaks down the thought step by step, explaining, before entrusting someone with the title of a true knight, one must first develop the necessary skill and knowledge. His face is firm, resting on. In this conviction lies experience. He recalls how he once served in the Royal Knights, even before becoming a teacher, so he understands well what exactly is at risk. Putting someone so obviously incapable a captain at the head would mean jeopardizing the entire unit. The grim truth illustrated by a solitary figure, bloodied, standing on a battlefield strewn with swords. This memory firmly cements his position. Like one entrusted to lead the youth, he clings to a single principle and has no intention of yielding. He sits at the table, a solitary figure and nothing more. Having fulfilled his duty, he returns to the current clash and calmly tells the director. His assessment of her son's behavior as a knight is F. Objective assessment. His resilience only fuels her anger. Director Arnoldord declares that his evaluation criteria are worthless. Her voice soars with indignation as she insists there is no reason why her son Kyle should not receive. He bluntly rejects its foundation. He says that such parental love turns into outright absurdity. Looking her straight in the eyes, he declares, if she truly cares about her son, now is the time for strict assessments and discipline, not for leniency. The lips of Director Arnoldord twitch into a thin, contemptuous lining. With a quiet HMPH, she yields, admitting, if he is so stubborn, then so be it. She still holds the official document. If he does not recognize the potential of the student named Kyle, the director announces that he must leave the academy immediately. Calm, unshaken voice comes directly from off-screen. Clear. All right, very good. The voice belongs to Orn Edwards. He stands before the director, a firm face, no hesitation. Orn Edwards accepts her ultimatum and says that if she feels that way, he will resign, then officially announces his resignation, effective immediately. The director freezes for a moment and before she can recover asks, what did he just say? Her composure breaks instantly. She understands, he is speaking seriously and with all his might slaps his palm down, making the surface beneath her crack. His face twists with rage as she yells at him, calling him a reed and demands he get out of her sight. Somewhere in the distance, Orn is already walking away. When he gets out, Kyle Arnoldord intercepts him and calls him a fool. Kyle insists that his assessment was fair, then contemptuously admits he just thought Oren would give in to his mother's demands and by this reveals his connection to the director. At the end, he grimaces, showing disgust for former knight hardheads like Oren. Then he sprinkles mockery and taps his temple, mockingly asking if Oren's brain is also made of muscles, and adds, why can't he try to live a little smarter? He leans closer and smiles crookedly, mocking, at your age, being without work is probably difficult. Then he sarcastically adds that there is plenty of work. Oren leaves without a word, but Kyle shouts after him, stop pretending to be tough and keep in mind, you will bitterly regret your decision. Kyle looks at Oren's retreating figure and shouts the last insult, loser. After that, the scene pulls back and it becomes clear. This entire quarrel happened in the past, like a story. Oren not only left the academy, he also left the kingdom of Giades. His listener, the young knight Grover Hurston, is frozen in surprise and asks if it really happened. He insists giving a ride by carriage to the capital is nothing compared to the gratitude he owes Oren. Feeling a bit guilty, Oren still agrees, admitting he is exhausted after the long journey. Standing in the paved courtyard of the academy, Oren looks back and says that although he never properly said goodbye to the students, he is still confident in their abilities. But as soon as he lets go of the memories, in his thoughts he honestly admits to himself, There is one and only girl he truly worries about. She was familiar to him even before she entered the academy. His train of thought shatters completely as a desperate cry sounds. A young woman calls out Professor Oren. He turns sharply and with surprise recognizes his student Patricia Grayson. Stammering with excitement, she declares that she has finally found him. She immediately interrogates him. Is it true that he left the academy, and why is he standing here now right before leaving? Despite his muffled, silent questions, she begs him to take her with him, promises she will not be a burden, and says plainly the academy without him makes no sense to her. He asks what her motivation is, and Patricia replies, thanks to his guidance, she has become strong enough to protect herself despite all her passionate words, or quietly adds, she needs to return. He insists, let her listen. He assures her that it is not too late to return and explains she is one of the most talented students he has ever taught, so because of that he cannot stand in the way of her bright future. Her request tears through memories. She recalls how Oren, during the time he served in the Knights, saved her from being sold to criminals. And in tears, she recounts how he ordered her to call him Big Brother and not to stop to come to her even after she was sent to the orphanage. She insists that she has not yet repaid the debt, but begs him to be near, especially now when he is fighting. Patricia's face lights up with pure joy. Nearby, Grover Hurston quietly whispers to Oren that Patricia has truly made a final decision. Oren agrees inwardly. She has always been stubborn. He sighs and seems to fixate on the thought that he still considers her exactly like a younger sister even before he became a teacher, so she is constantly on his mind. Humbly, he asks her only to be careful. Patricia nods enthusiastically. When the carriage moves, she impatiently reaches for the window and begins to ask questions. He cuts her off mid-sentence, warning, don't stick out too far or you might fall. She turns with slight irritation and asks whether he treats her like a child or looks away, hiding his thoughts. And inside she mutters to herself, from his point of view, people her age are still just children. Her irritability instantly dissolves as soon as she quickly dismisses the question, insisting that it is nothing. But as soon as she notices her own sharp change, she harshly reproaches. She asks why exactly he does that, what kind of habit it is. Oren watches as she turns back to the window and her face lights up with surprise. Outside the glass, landscapes flash by one after another like in a kaleidoscope. He thinks that girls her age sometimes find it hard to understand, but still admits she is quite mature for her years, and yet he feels relief finally she is behaving like a child. The quiet moment was broken as soon as Grover Hurston cleared his throat and again turned the conversation back to their goal. He directly asked Oren if he heard correctly. Oren hopes to meet the king. He did not back down further, searching for Oren's intentions. He asked whether he seeks a ministerial position as a sage, or if he plans to found a new academy and become its head, and ordered him not to rush. In response to the knight's concern, Warren explained, sage is just a nickname given to him by colleagues at the academy, and he never had any official title. Then he revealed the real reason. He remembers that the king once asked him to investigate a certain island. Grover's explanation caught him by surprise. He repeated the word island several times as if doubting, and each time he began to ask for clarification, anxiety wavered in his voice. He confirmed it is indeed the same island he was assigned to survey. As soon as this was said, Patricia sharply turned away from the window and the anxiety slipped from her face. Fearfully, she asked if he meant exactly that place. While the fear still trembled after the revelation, Oren's voice sharply cut through the silence. He recognized the ominous crescent-shaped island as Rachai. Oren explained, although it was not far from the royal capital Estrada, frequent violent storms raging nearby gave it a much more terrifying nickname, Calamity Island. Then he turned to Grover Hurston. He had previously refused the king's request because he was overwhelmed by educational duties, but now he wants to accept the mission. Grover expressed concern, reminding that the island is shrouded in mystery and every reconnaissance team sent there had failed. This only strengthened Oren's determination. He declared, that is exactly why the truth must be uncovered. Hearing his determination, Patricia rushed to call out, offering help. He turned to her with a smile as if understanding everything and admitted she would follow him anyway even if he refused. Briefly, all right, and he accepted her alongside. Her offer was accepted instantly. Her face lit up with resolve and a confident "yes, sir" sounded in her voice. He solemnly welcomed her to the mission and said he was counting on her. During this journey, they soon reached the grand gate of the royal capital Estrada. The guards on duty, James and Hag, froze in shocked disbelief upon recognizing the arrival. Lord Oren, the sage of Geo, did. He greeted the two knights warmly, addressing them by name, which shocked them even more. Then he gave the order to inform His Majesty. Professor Oren is here and wishes to see him immediately. A moment later, inside the castle, Oren, Patricia, and Grover knelt and bowed their heads respectfully. While waiting, Oren quietly remarked that the two guards James and Hag looked as if. A voice answered from the throne before them. King Estrada agreed, yes, indeed a lot of time has passed, addressing him officially as Ornette. The king continued, explaining that Oren's previous efforts had left a lasting mark. He recalled how Oren became a living link between the peoples of Estrada and Gyades, and how his enthusiasm for student exchange was especially remembered by the country, which is just as reclusive as. He stands before the throne, paying proper respect and at the same time feels unworthy of the king's praise. From his place, King Estrada says he has been waiting for this reunion. The king notes, Oren seems to have endured many trials in Gyades. Oren agrees events unfolded unexpectedly, but now that he is free, new goals have appeared. Finally, it is possible to realize what was intended. Straight to the point, the king declares that Oren must be here because of Rosh Island. The young sage can only utter the king's title in super. He expresses his thoughts and reminds Oren that when they last talked about the island, Oren suddenly became very excited. The king guesses correctly, that is why Oren came to him immediately after returning. The thoughts seem exhausted to him already, and the king turns and calls, ordering to prepare the ship immediately. Standing nearby is Knight Grover Hurston. In a moment, like a shot, he takes a battle stance and confirms. As the command sounded, Patricia turns to Oren and asks if he is really okay with this sudden news. The king immediately interrupts. There are no problems, moreover, he declares that only Oren is capable of responsibly undertaking the inspection and development of the island, and asks to confirm that he can count on him. Oren's determination does not waver for a moment. He looks directly at the king and confirms, of course. He officially accepts the task. The mission is already set. He is ready for anything. As soon as his new appointment becomes finally clear, the Hermit Elder silently swears an oath will reveal the truth about Rosh Island. 3 days after the audience with King Estrada, the journey begins on a small boat. It cuts through the waves. Oren, Patricia, and Knight Grover Hurston set out into the open ocean. Oren reflexes time has finally come. Standing on the bow, Oren looks at the horizon and barely smiles. He feels the same as his companion, though he says not a word, instead thinking that he is already impatiently waiting to reach the mysterious Rosh Island. Their ship sails straight ahead through endless waters bathed in sunlight. Grover Hurston turns to his companions and, providing information, estimates, to reach the destination they will need about an hour. And he himself closely monitors the progress, noting the ship's high productivity. He says that thanks to magic or power supply, it maintains an unusually stable speed. Suddenly, Patricia's attention is caught by something ahead. She breaks into a scream, urgently calls Oren, calling him Professor, and points into the distance. Her finger points at a strange phenomenon on the water's surface. A distinct trail seems to be carved out of the waves. Grover Hurston calmly explains for the website. The path appears only when the tide is low, and on the go, he carefully absorbs every new detail. He immediately picks up the hint. If one knew the exact time of its appearance, it would be possible to get from the island to the capital without any ship. He glanced toward the approaching shore and a smile spread across his face. Patricia suggested, as soon as they settle in, they will bring horses from the capital. Oren agreed. The excitement for the new life grew with every moment, and he announced that he could finally see the island. The island, when the outlines had already formed in the dense line of palms, a voice joyfully exclaimed, arrived. The confirmation was illuminated by their own reaction, the faces of Oren and Patricia as they stood at the bow of the boat and looked at their new home. A few moments passed. Oren's boots touched the sandy shore. He froze for a moment, as if savoring the tropical landscape, and behind him, Patricia and Grover Hurston managed the arrival. Oren turned to the young knight, apologizing for making him spend so much effort. But Grover quickly waved off the apologies. It was, he said, not a bit of trouble, and he would do everything for Oren and his young companion. Later, Grover expressed regret and wished he could help with the investigation that would soon begin. However, he honestly admitted, his main task was to protect people, and he told Oren that he appreciated the very thought. Grover's expression sharpened with firm determination. He confirmed that he would remain on alert and immediately run if anything happened, and he sharply emphasized his promise, "Yes, sir." She, in response, with a reassuring smile, made the young knight understand. she was counting on him. Just as they began a new life, the shadows of the past still lingered nearby. Corruption at the top of the academy and the unjust dismissal of Professor Oren remained unresolved issues weighing heavily on their minds. This injustice weighed heavily on Grover's soul. He looked into the distance, lamented that they could not allow this to continue, and felt powerless since he had already left the country. It was the same helpless irritation that Oren, watching him, seemed to understand all too well. Leaving the others behind, Oren climbed into a small boat and crossed the calm sea to Roch Island, cautiously weighing the hope that from now on everything would move for the better. Now he is on the shore together with Patricia, unfolding the map given by the king and explaining their first plan, to set off according to the map to the estate that is said to have been built on the island for guests. Visitors, the map in his hands is simple. It shows the coastline and a large brush-painted mark with a place deep inland. He shifts his gaze to Patricia. Doubt is on her face. Then he offers a reassuring smile or honestly admits this map is all they have left to rely on, so there is no other way, they have to believe. A finger on the map traces the route as he names the direction northwest. He warns they are entering lands that no one has explored yet, where fierce predators, man-eating plants, and other monsters may dwell. She replies a firm, "Yes, sir," understanding the danger, and even adds orders to keep their ears sharp as they move further to where the forest grows denser. Then they enter the dense forest. Oren walks ahead and his cloak barely flutters as they make their way through the thick undergrowth. Patricia notices nearby towers a mountain of great height and possibly a dungeon as well. Hearing this, Oren's expression changes sharply. He quickly notes that this reconnaissance seems worth more than he initially assumed. Her survey of the landscape is interrupted as she notices something ahead. "Professor, look at this," she calls, pointing to a clearly defined path trampled in the soil. He confirms that he saw it too. Patricia freezes in thought. Apparently, this is a path leading straight to the very center of the island, but Oren proposes another theory, perhaps an ancient route marked by someone who landed here during the reign of the last king. He examines the path and notices cuts on nearby branches look fresh. Patricia asks why he thinks the path was made recently. She looks without hesitation and adds her own observation. The traces of passage seem not to be from those years. Once their attention is drawn to the ground, we are already erased, but on the dirty soil, traces are still visible, imprinted in the dust. While Oren kneels to examine the tracks, she confirms her guess is correct. Someone was here very recently. Patricia suggests, maybe these are not the Aborigines from the island, that possibility, whose silent confirmation she catches with her gaze. She nods, then she proposes another version. She says it could be survivors of a shipwreck, since here, as is known, big ones often happen. Storms, he stands up and decides, regardless of how everything turns out, they need to keep going and figure things out, continuing their path. He shows the way and urges them, find the estate faster. He explains that if someone is hiding on the island, they cannot sleep outside. After a clear salute, Patricia nods and immediately agrees with enthusiasm. Here, he says softly to her, "There's no need to be so formal since we are no longer at the academy." Patricia nods embarrassedly, but she feels better and she asks if she can change how she addresses him. He glanced over his shoulder at her as if to say she called him Big Brother, just as he never did. The past, this thought briefly brings a nostalgic expression to his face as he continues walking and says, it brings back memories like during the war when she once called him that. He agrees with Patricia, admitting, being called Big Brother would also be uncomfortable for him, especially now that he has grown older. Her face slightly fills with sadness from his. She immediately objects, her eyes wide with surprise, asking why that should be uncomfortable. She confidently says, for her, he will always be. Professor, as they continued making their way through the forest, everything was already decided. Although Patricia suggested several other names, none of them fit properly, so in the end she started calling him Per. The road leads them deep into the island, into dense, overgrown thickets. Foliage moves forward and Patricia stays completely behind. Then she carefully paves the way, leads across a bridge made of a large fallen log thrown over the shell. Creek, having reached a clearing, Oren announces that they have finally arrived. Patricia looks around and says that the road turned out to be longer than she thought. She expected that in front of them is a ruined building with a wooden frame. Patricia notes that it looks more like a hut than a mansion, or remains optimistic, as long as they don't sleep under the open sky, at least something. And it seems there are at least two. rooms as soon as the sun hides below the horizon, or when Oren decides that they will spend the night in the shelter, Patricia willingly. Natalie agrees. Inside, Lauren warns Patricia to watch her step, shows that part of the floor has collapsed. But the warning comes too late. As soon as she takes a step forward, the rotten boards break under her with a sharp crack and she lets out a scream. Having passed through the hole, she lands among the broken boards, but Oren is already nearby. In a moment, he grabs her hand and pulls her out of danger. He asks her to. If she was hurt, she twitches and says, "It's okay," but inside he beats himself up for this mistake. He was sure he was holding his weight well enough to avoid such a collapse. His gaze falls on the bed in the corner. He thinks, if the floor under Patricia collapsed so easily, then the boards are in terrible condition. But suddenly something catches his attention. The bed looks strangely clean. Shaking off these thoughts, he urges her to move on. She quickly agrees, but her face shows confusion. The same contradiction does not leave her thoughts. Despite the rotten floor base, the bed remains impeccably clean. She realizes she spoke her thoughts aloud and only added embarrassment. He moves closer to examine the bed and notices the construction is crude, as if it was made as an ordinary bed. He hurries. This detail only strengthens his suspicion that the place is worth checking. It increasingly seems that someone came here earlier. That was a long time ago, so they leave the investigation for a moment. He turns back to Patricia and offers her the bed for the night. She objects in surprise, but then, with a confident expression, suggests they could share it. Her face flashes a deep red and she stammers, then nods in agreement. He gently declines her offer, explaining that the bed is probably too small for two, though he appreciates her concern. He appreciates her intention. He watches her flinch, look down, and understands her reaction. She is probably ashamed at the thought of sleeping alone in bed while he leaves. Despite the initial difficulties, they managed to find a safe place to sleep. They settled down for the night and closed their eyes early to prepare for the darkness. For the day to come, under the starry sky, the quiet, dark silhouette of Roch Island, squeezed by trees, lies motionless in silence. In the calm sea, far away in the kingdom of Giatti, a letter arrived at the knight's dormitory for the young knight, Grover Hurston. Another knight loudly announced the delivery and handed it over. Grover took the envelope, and in his calm tone, nostalgia barely trembled from his elder Grover. But as soon as he opened the contents, his composure shattered. His eyes widened in shock as soon as he saw the name Professor Oren. A young man named Blitz, a holy knight of the jihadist state, froze, staring at the document in his own hands. He read, "Unjust dismissal from the director," and suddenly realized that there was indeed something wrong with how Oren Sensei solemnly and suddenly resigned. The memory of his teacher Sensei flickers in his head with anxiety. Blitz's thoughts roll back to the past Agen when he was still a boy. He remembers overhearing conversations that because of his weak body he could not become a knight, meaning the dream was hopeless. And how he himself already folds his hands, staying aside, watching the training pass by. Sitting dejectedly, Blitz hears a voice. Oren calls him and asks why he wouldn't try holding a sword. The young Blitz told everything to his parents, but they insisted the same. It was impossible due to a weak body. Oren, however, disagreed. He told the boy that he had talent and that with further training, becoming a holy knight was not beyond dreams. And he also encouraged, he cannot promise success, but he definitely knows one thing: if Blitz continues to move forward, something truly valuable will surely grow from these efforts. Inspired, Blitz entered the academy and trained relentlessly under Oren's guidance. His dedication eventually culminated in an incredible achievement. He earned the title Holy Knight at the youngest age in the entire history of the kingdom. The memory breaks often. We are back in the present. Blitz stands before Oren, now a full-fledged knight. He solemnly reports success and says he owes everything to his teacher. Oren smiles filled with pride and corrects him. It is the merit of Blitz's own ability. While he listens, stern determination settles on Oren's features. He already sees he needs to deal with a few things directly related to his release. Meanwhile, Blitz feels time tightening around his throat. He understands he must immediately push forward and inform others, those who are still not fully aware of what is happening around Oren. He sits at the table by the large window and begins to write decisively, without any delay, to spread the news as quickly as possible. At the same time, in the capital, King Estrada hands a sealed letter to Captain Haig. The service bell rings and the king gives a brief, urgent order: deliver the letter immediately. The captain only nods and accepts the order without any objections. As soon as the captain scans the letter's contents, his gaze sharply flashes with recognition. He immediately understood. The topic is from the same golden generation as the Holy Knight Blitz. and the king confirmed this, saying sternly that this man truly is one of them. This golden generation is the name given to a group of classmates from the Royal Magic Sword Academy of Geodicea, celebrated as geniuses unmatched since the kingdom's founding. Blitz, the Holy Knight, Jacqueline, the Witch of 1,000 Faces, Elise, the Saintess, and Wendell, the magical tool engineer, each possessing extraordinary talent and fulfilling their key role. The king emphasizes the matter is urgent and it must be kept in strict secrecy. Captain Haig feels the gravity of the situation and sharply asks if something terrible has happened. His face tenses. Somewhere far away or simply sitting in a well-furnished room, he replays recent events in his mind. He thinks to start a border expedition immediately after retirement is exactly what he expected from that person. His new residence is a cozy house hidden among dense trees, far from the capital's hustle and bustle. He decides to act and tightens the laces on his boots more firmly. From today, they will begin a real survey of the island. Island, pulling the hood over his head, looks forward intently and clearly states their first goal, to check if there is anyone on the island besides them. Island's thoughts return again to the lonely nature of Roch Island. He reasons, if someone really lives there, they should have already noticed a trail, and the absence of any connection with the capital suggests they might be deliberately avoiding them. Action. Standing before the dense forest with Patricia, Oren warns any trouble may be lurking in the thickets. She looks straight ahead, not averting her eyes, and replies, "Don't worry. Her decision is simple: to survive at any cost, no matter what happens." Before them stretched the forest of Roch Island, dense crowns, a sea of green, and a partly cloudy sky. As soon as they got into the thicket, Patricia felt that they had not yet found anything truly worth noticing. Oren agreed and added that, strangely enough, he also did not feel any monsters nearby. She looked at him, and at that very moment his own advice came to mind, not to let his guard down. He caught her gaze and confirmed the same word for word with a smile. With new determination, or perhaps just at someone's hint, they go deeper into the forest, convinced they can find something else. Patricia agrees immediately. They continued their passage. Tall trees of the ancient forest closed in around, dense, deafening, and impenetrable. Suddenly Oren broke off and sharply turned his head, as if instantly sensing something is going wrong. He quickly pushed her towards cover. "Something wrong, Sensei?" she asked, and within a moment unease appeared on her face as he led them further. Hiding behind the cover of thick bush, he whispered that they were on their tail. The revelation stunned Patricia. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she barely breathed out through the gap. A guttural roar sounded from the throat, and before them emerged a huge creature, a beast with smooth, pale skin, a shell on its back, and dark, faceless eyes. "Hello." The throat peeking through the leaves, Patricia froze, stunned and gripped by fear. For the girl who had always stayed within the safe bounds of the academy, this was her first encounter with a monster. She squeezes out an affirmative answer to Oren's question about her condition with a trembling voice. He stands before her like a protective wall and surveys the huge creature looming over them. He grimly states, "It seems it has decided to make them its breakfast." From the relative safety of the underbrush, Oren confirms that the creature has hostile intentions and says they must make him regret his decision. After that, he returns to Patricia with an unexpected proposal that she herself should try to take it on. He drops the subject and says it will be excellent training. He assures her that with her skills everything will go as it should, and Patricia is allowed, surprised even by the very proposal. Her thoughts are in turmoil as she dares to approach the monster alone. She hears hesitation within herself, where he literally presses his palm to her shoulder and says, "Don't worry." He promises to be nearby if something goes wrong, presenting it as an integral part of the whole experience. His support steals her last strength. Looking intently ahead, Patricia accepts the challenge and firmly declares she will prove she is capable of protecting herself. Only before her flashes a complex, bright magical circle as soon as she calls the solemn magical step. She steps into the open, clutching the staff in her hand, and stands opposite the colossal creature from the forest belt. Oren watches, contemplating her unique power. Most people have only one magical attribute, but Patricia is a rare exception as she controls 5: water, wind, fire, earth, and lightning. Moreover, her mana reserve significantly exceeds the level of an ordinary mage. The creature lets out a deafening roar from the depths of its lungs. Its maw is full of sharp teeth. Without averting her gaze for a moment, Patricia holds her position, her face focused to the edge. Oren, observing her, notes with satisfaction she lacks no courage as he expected, so he begins to prepare his own magic. At the threat, she raises her staff and summons a series of large, complex magical shields. They hang in the air, rotate around her, and close into a powerful defense. Her defense worked just in time. The monster lunges forward, its head crashes into one of the glowing shields. The beast lets out a furious, guttural roar and its attack jams on. Her determined attempts fail. The first assault is repelled, but cracks are already spreading like a web across the magical construct. Behind the barrier, Patricia stands in her usual stance, composed and ready to unleash her own counterattack. Instead of defense, she ran into a new threat with a fierce counterattack. The monstrous creature with a shark's head and a powerful quadruped body lunged at her, and the force of their collision shattered everything. Breaking the ground from beneath the shelter of the dense forest, or rushing to watch the battle. His concentration was broken by a sharp noise from another direction. His eyes widened with alarm. He just realized another monster was already nearby. He knew that even Patricia would not cope. Into one battle, unaware of the second threat, Patricia focused on her opponent and mentally noted that this creature was much faster than the Tortilla was already there. Suddenly, Valrin noticed a new danger from an unexpected angle. "Patricia, above!" he shouted suddenly. She looked up and something in her face switched sharply. Her gaze caught a figure rapidly falling from the sky. A dark-skinned woman with long, white flowing hair gripped a staff and was diving headlong straight toward the rear part. When the unknown woman closed the distance, a desperate scream burst from her lips, tearing the silence, and a moment later it was cut off when. Throughout all this horror, a stunned, distrustful numbness grew within him as he watched the attackers deal with the gaze. And suddenly he was sharply shaken by the realization. Her target was not the monster, it was Patricia. A loud, fierce scream rises in the air as the mysterious woman with dark skin and long light hair raises her staff and strikes it down. Her fight with the giant monster is already over. Below, Oren, eyes wide open, watches her sudden appearance. She triumphantly rises on the back of the fallen beast. With one perfect strike, she hit the most vulnerable spot and now can only freeze in amazement, staring at her own strength. He and Patricia approach the warrior. Patricia explains that they arrived from the continent with their teacher, so the woman did not recognize their faces, and hearing about the continent and the teacher, looks confused. Patricia is glad that contact was finally established, but immediately her thoughts flare up about Oren and she exclaims that there is another person. Oren is a bit embarrassed, he was just noticed. All of Imu's attention fully shifts to them. She asks if they came from outside the island, and when Oren confirms, her face lights up with a broad and friendly smile. She introduces herself as Imu and says she is pleased to meet them. Imu's excitement is felt immediately. She exclaims that this is her first time talking to someone not from the island, that she has a lot of questions, and asks them to wait a moment. Imu's gaze again stops on the dead monster. Patricia, leaning in with interest, asks what she intends to do with the body of this creature. Imu happily explains his plan, how to return the meat from the neck for soup, and even boasts that it is incredibly nutritious and instantly cures any disease. Oren silently considers this, noting that such a food culture is truly unique. After her explanation, Valrin asks about the house. She points to the trees and says she lives in the nearest village. Confirmation that this is really a village on the island reinforced Oren's assumption. He immediately asked if he and Patricia could go with her. Oren explained that they arrived to investigate the island and, although much remains unclear, they want to talk with the locals. After finishing examining the monster's remains, he gladly met them and invited them in. As soon as her consent was obtained, Oren accepted the condition without hesitation and ordered her to lead. When they moved through the forest, he called out to Imu, said that her previous fight was incredible, and then asked if someone had taught her to fight exactly like that. Imu replied that no one had truly taught her, so Patricia asked in surprise if all the peasants were as strong as she was. After that, Oren clarified, not all, but there are a few others besides her who are capable of dealing with monsters. When she walked ahead and he carefully watched her movements, he suddenly clearly understood. Her fighting style was purely instinctive. Yet he reasoned that even despite this, her speed and strength were by no means ordinary. He was convinced with proper training she was capable of becoming an extraordinarily strong warrior. His thoughts were interrupted as Imu suddenly announced their arrival. In front of them hung a settlement, straw roofs, huts, and tents, fortified with a wooden palisade and a tall watchtower. Imu proudly introduced it as Basil Village, her native place. Inside, as soon as they received a brief overview, the rhythm of rural life became visible. Food was laid out on woven trays to dry in the open air. Having led them just to the very village, Kimu turned around and ordered them to wait exactly where they were standing. She headed to the largest tent within the camp and went inside. When she disappeared, Patricia wondered who could be living there, so Oren guessed. Judging by the size, someone of high status had definitely settled there. He did not have to wait long. A man from the large tent appeared again with a fair face. He announced that the village elder wanted to meet with them. This was exactly what Oren had been counting on. She led them inside, and there they came face to face with an elderly woman whose stern gaze radiated authority. The chief confirmed everything Imu had told her, acknowledging them as people who came from outside the island. Oren glides his gaze over them, and Patricia briefly confirms she will stay close to Oren. Then Oren is officially named Oren Edwards and says that King Estrada ordered him to investigate Roch Island. And he notes to himself, they hardly look like soldiers from Estrada. Her skepticism was obvious. She snorted disdainfully at the very idea of an investigation, called it a roundabout excuse, and demanded to know their real purpose. He weighed her demand, trying to guess their true goal. He was surprised that these islanders even knew about Estrada, while the kingdom had not heard of their existence at all. His brief hesitation seemed only to confirm her suspicions. Watching his reaction, the elder concluded he really knew nothing. After that, she directly asked if they were hiding from the king. The fist of the leader's hand clenched as soon as she said it. Despite everything, her people have no intention of engaging in close contact with foreigners. Oren immediately interrupted her, explaining that their isolation was the very reason he came to check. He insisted further, swore he would not cause any problems, and begged for permission to continue. But the head had already decided, sharply refused, saying that if he truly understood her position, he would leave the island immediately. His stubbornness only irritated her anger. "You're stubborn, huh?" She gave in briefly, but her voice was already rising as she began to make a statement. "This island." Before she could finish speaking, Imu suddenly shouted, "Chief!" Her sharp tone cut through the tension, and in her gaze anxiety. One more moment and it would flare up even more intensely. The tense confrontation breaks off as a young woman, Imu, bursts in and screams, "Shiano's condition has worsened." The village elder glares angrily at the interruption of his important conversation, and Oren reacts with wide-open eyes. Eye on the alarm, he immediately decides to act and tells Patricia that they must go too. She responds firmly and without any hesitation. Yes, without uttering a word, they jump out of the hut and rush after Imu into the village. While they flee further, a shirtless islander watches them and thinks that the locals seem to have a poor attitude towards people from the continent. Just then That same evening, the same man and his companion approached Oren and Patricia, warmly inviting them both to join the festival as a sign. The sun begins to set over the island, over its palm trees. In another hut, Imu screams in panic to her mother, the chieftain. Shirano vomited from the little she managed to eat, and now, in despair, she begs what to do as Imu was already kneeling beside the sick girl. He says he can figure out the cause, but the chief attacks him, turning furious with anger. The chieftain demands an explanation on what basis she should trust an outsider with her precious daughter, and declares that the outsider status is precisely the reason why this cannot be done. The expression on his face desperate urgency. He implores the commander trust him at least once, for Shiano's sake, and warns that if they do not act immediately, it may be too late. While the confused Imu watches, Patricia intervenes and says that teacher Oren is incredible. He is called a sage on the continent. She confidently asserts if it is him, he will be able to save Shirano. Imu's desperate plea to save her sister makes Oren stop and look at Shirano, who is barely breathing. He says he cannot guarantee the outcome but has a plan in case. If his healing magic does not work, he will go to the continent to get medicine. Hearing his determination, Imu agrees to entrust her sister to him, and kneels beside Shirano. Shirano stretches out his hands, they shine with bright light, and he begins to apply the treatment. Magic. When the light envelops the girl, or at least he admits this himself, healing magic is not his specialty. He can only hope for a mild, temporary effect. He is tormented by the thought that if the illness is truly serious, this will not be enough. Nearby, Imu watches and quiets everything, listening to his sister's exhausting breathing. It seems to ease. The spell is coming to an end, and relief spreads across Oren's face for a moment. He states that the condition does not seem like Life-threatening, those were the words. Imu is overwhelmed with relief, trembling and unable to believe. Patricia, warmly smiling, explains that along with the magic's effect, the ailment is apparently temporary. Oren picks up and reassures them. Sharana will soon get better, then asks Imu if anything has changed in her sister's usual routine. It has changed recently. The village elder, hearing this, steps forward with a focused expression. She suggests, maybe it's just overwork, recalling how Sharano has been working harder than usual lately, preparing for the upcoming festival, and in conversation listens and agrees, summarizing that with proper rest, Sharano. Everything will be fine. She looks down at her daughter, her face already calm, as if in a dream. The chief notices with surprise, the torment that was still visible on the girl's face a moment ago now seems to have disappeared along with something else. Distant memory. Stepping away from her daughter's bed, the chief shifts her gaze to Oren, and his hardened restraint falters for a moment. She is truly grateful and thanks him for saving her daughter's life. Oren modestly waves it off as if to say, it's not a sign. Significant effort. When they leave the hut, he continues to downplay his role, explaining that he was able to help only because Cheyenne's symptoms were minor. The elder agrees but admits, in panic, they could have taken harsh and unnecessary steps without his intervention. His restrained explanation hangs in the air as they look toward the beach. Somewhere in the distance, a small group of islanders has gathered. The tension that it held since then has already dissipated. Silence has fallen. Above the village, suddenly a tense confrontation flares up. A burly islander, waving a large stick, aggressively demands to know who these newcomers are and what they want here. In the village, to hostility, he responds like this. The elder stands between that man and Oren and, without raising her voice, calmly orders her relatives to stand down. She accepts his concern and immediately reminds him, Sharana was saved thanks to Oren. The man is still wary, insisting that the guests are clearly not in their right mind. Before he can continue, Imu rushes forward and loudly tells her father that it is true. Warren is the person who healed her mother. The illusion of illness overwhelms him, and this revelation strikes him so much that moment by moment, he bows deeply before Oren, pleadingly apologizing as if he is the very savior of his wife. Oren cuts him off dryly. Don't do that. There is no need to admire this, it is unnecessary worry. As soon as the misunderstanding cleared up, the village erupted in celebration. Night falls, they light a large bonfire, the flames dance under the stars, and around it the silhouettes of all who gathered appear and disappear. For the holiday they prepare a banquet, trays with fried meat, food wraps in leaves, and large bowls full of pickled vegetables. In the laboratory, the warm glow of the fire hides a drink, and Orange sits and watches the celebration. Nearby, Patricia and Imu stand together. Their former hostility has vanished as they gaze at the flames. The village head approaches him and asks if he is having fun here, and he replies to her with a smile that he is having fun because it is all thanks to kindness. For everyone, she apologizes again for how they initially treated him. He only replies that he is glad to hear these words, and, leaving the conversation behind, they share a quiet pause for a moment longer. By the fire, he sits next to the village leader, who asks if he understands. Their first hostility was a natural reaction. Then he interrupts everything with a calming smile and says that everything is fine and that they completely. Then the chief asks if all people on the continent heal others the same way he does, or clarifies, although many can perform simple healing magic, this skill is not all-powerful. He gives an example. He talks about his student, an expert in treating diseases and injuries, whose power is so special that she was even called saint. While he speaks, the image of Emmy appears on the screen. It occurs to me, the main doubts are about how to understand that such powerful figures should be rare at all. Then she reveals the real reason why her people are wary of strangers. Her grandparents' generation had a great conflict with people from the continent. Oren freezes at this discovery. It means something important happened once. The sergeant confirms his suspicion but adds a troubling detail. The details of that event were never wrote it down. She is pondering her decision, wondering if it was really possible to go against one instruction she was always given: never let strangers in. She throws the letters into the village. She laughs quietly, looks at Oren, and says that he and his companion look quite reliable. They radiate honesty, the kind that cannot betray. While they sit by the campfire, the chief shares an important part of the story. The islanders began hiding from the kingdom of Islada during the reign of the predecessor of the former king. The most amazing thing is that no records of this have survived, so she assumes their history might have been destroyed. like a puppy, and there was simply no trace left of her. Somewhere in the middle of the celebration, Patricia suddenly sharply realizes something. Her eyes widen, a thought connects in her head, and she remembers one word. The teacher sees how the dream shatters instantly. Imu and another girl from the island, together with teacher Oren, catch him and cheerfully pull him to their feet, nudging Himjane in and dance. Oren inside already agrees. At night they will still have to investigate the island's mysteries, but now they just need to cherish this moment and enjoy the time with the people around them. At Ray Knoll Grand Cathedral in the Kingdom of Geodes, the morning prayer begins. The priest leads the congregation, hoping for a blessed day for all. The prayer is directed at a woman with long light hair and pointed ears. Her hands are folded in submission, and those present gaze at her entranced, whispering that she is as divine as an angel or even a goddess. After the service in the quieter chapel, a student approaches the woman, Lady Eliza. He thanks her for her efforts and informs her a letter has arrived and she left it on Eliza's table. Eliza also thanks him in response. She sits at the table and with slight surprise notes that the letter is from Blitz. But as soon as she reads the content, her facial expression sharply tightens in distrust and shock. Oren Sensei is retiring. News again twist Eliza's thoughts back to those student days at the academy where she first met Oren. A memory surfaces in a fragment. A handkerchief falls onto the stone courtyard. In that memory, younger Eliza encounters another student, Patricia, who hisses not to be too friendly with her, venomously calling her half-breed. Eliza is stunned, apologizes, turns away in despair, and the handkerchief slips from her hands. It was then that Oren appeared. He told her not to let such prejudices control her, saw her true nature, and explained, her kindness is a power capable of saving others. Her body is naturally attuned to healing magic. He also encouraged her to use this gift and even predicted that someday she might become a saintess. Turning back to the present, Elise looks at the letter. She finally understands. The clues he gave her are exactly why she can stand in the Grand Cathedral, so she left not only the academy but also abandoned the entire royal path to follow him. The author of the letter, Blitz, writes nervously and in a hurry. He wants to immediately inform all his former graduates about the situation with the professor and ask for help to convey this. He decides, while others spread rumors, he himself investigates the academy, and as a postscript he orders to forward the letter to Wendell and let him contact Jacqueline. Somewhere far in Patricia Grayson's mind, a thought suddenly ripens to write a letter, and her thoughts run to her former teacher. She hopes that Oren Sensei is feeling well. Then, with fresh determination, she firmly tells herself, you can't just sit and do nothing. Meanwhile, Orr and he himself struggle with regret after the festive banquet. He squeezes his head and grumbles that he drank too much, yet he still reminds himself, the village elder finally allowed him to survey the island, so he can't be idle. He knows he must get up immediately. With effort, he pulls himself to sit, despite the echoes of last night that have not yet receded. While he moves, he feels warmth nearby in bed. A sharp shock of confusion and anxiety runs through his body. He knows Patricia must be in another room, so who the hell could be lying next to him? He carefully lifts the blanket and comes across Imu, who is sleeping peacefully beside him. In her sleep, she quietly whispers her own name with a relieved sigh, as if unaware of how awkward it looks. Just as he manages to come to his senses, the bedroom door slides open, and Patricia appears in the doorway. Her eyes wide with surprise when she sees him awake, and her gaze immediately slides to Imu in bed, and she lets out a frightened scream. Patricia abruptly rushes forward in a flurry of movements and shouts incoherently. Oren, still holding the half-asleep Imu, tries to defuse the situation and asks Patricia to calm down. A moment later, her first outburst of emotion subsides and her cheeks flush deeply. Patricia closes her eyes and apologizes, admitting that she lost her composure. The noise attracted another guest, a young islander with dusky skin and light hair. She peeks from behind the door next to Patricia and cheerfully calls, "Sensei." Patricia explains to her that what she just did is not proper etiquette, and that one must enter through the main entrance, to which the girl responds radiantly, "I understand." Her curiosity flared even stronger. The young woman turned to Orr with shining eyes and asks to teach her, to tell her everything about the world beyond the island. She recalls Patricia's words, that Orr knows everything, and explains wonderfully, so Orr suddenly looks a bit confused by such an instant demand. He sharply retorts that he will no longer be a teacher, but still agrees on the condition. If he teaches, it will be without any leniency. The young islander throws her hands up and joyfully exclaims with delight. Light having settled everything, Oren announces a new goal. to start a full-scale reconnaissance of the island right now, immediately. When they break into the dense forest, Oren freezes, stopped by the scale. The island is truly huge. He turns to his new pupil and guide, M, and asks if her people have ever moved a village. She does not hesitate and confirms, yes, their movements are determined by the seasons. And when it gets hot and ocean storms roll in stronger, her people move the settlement further from the coast. He absorbs this information and quite logically asks, if they have a nomadic lifestyle, have they already circled the entire island? She happily replies that no, not everything yet. Everything? She lays out the thought clearly and says that her people stick to familiar territories, those they have always used. They are not sure if new places are safe enough to live in. Understanding washes over him completely. Their migration stays within a clearly known circle of locations, so a large part of the island remains unexplored. As they continue the passage, he feels something changing ahead. He says they have been walking for a very long time, but she reassures him she is fine. They emerge from the thick greenery and immediately come upon a breathtaking view of the sunny coast. The water sparkles as waves cover the shore. Patricia freezes for a moment and silently exhales. Wow, M is no less enchanted. She exclaims that such beauty could exist even on her own island. She even jumps up pointing at the water and shouts that she spotted a fish. Patricia impatiently asks where, and Oren looks at them with a gentle smile, thinking how nice it is to see that they. When his companions were busy, he decided to continue exploring the area alone. His solo reconnaissance takes him to a rocky outcrop. When he looks over the edge, surprise changes his face and he quietly mutters that this is a very strange disk. Before him, as if impossibly squeezed between the coastal cliffs, lies a giant, decaying, multi-masted hull. This is a ship. He directly calls the colossal structure a ship. Shipwreck. Its prolonged silence immediately draws the attention of his comrades. They have already caught up with him. Patricia asks if he found anything, and he, catching how her behavior changes, answers with a question, did something happen? Everyone shifts their gaze to the incredible sight. Patricia exclaims with delight, examining the giant shipwreck vessel, it is simply incredible, or as the advertisement claims, such a massive collapse deserves. His assessment leads to a critical question and he turns directly to the new student, asking if she knew about this SHT. She clearly trembles at the question, her eyes widen in surprise. She freezes for a moment, then stammers a denial, insisting that this is the first time in her entire. He seems to hold his gaze on her answers for a moment and prolongs the pause, as if figuring out how to slip away. Having chosen a direction, he immediately cuts off. The ship must be thoroughly inspected because they might come across some clues. He steps onto the deck of the abandoned rusty tower and his analytical gaze slides over the interior. He says the ship is too large for ordinary merchant vessels, so he concludes someone of very high rank was here. Patricia, standing nearby, looks impressed and asks how he can even. He gestures toward the ship's cabin and explains, even after prolonged exposure to the elements, high-quality furniture and carpets remain remarkably in excellent condition. Patricia gasps at this thought and exclaims in complete disbelief, royalty. He muffles her shock and adds, although this is only a theory, it is quite likely that someone with royal status was on the ship. He continues the logic and says that if a person of such status disappeared, it would definitely have caused a big stir. In conclusion, he sums up, it is worth investigating the ship more deeply, perhaps this will lead to his country. Patricia then connects this with the previous discovery and asks the sensei if, in his opinion, some of the things brought to the mainland came from that ship. He replies that it is very likely. Nearby, he silently stands barefoot on the wooden floor. On the deck, noticing her quiet and detached behavior, I quietly shifts his gaze to the islander each time and asks, what's wrong? I presses further. He sees that she has been acting strangely since they found that shipwreck and asks if it means something to her. She hides her face in her hair, clenches her palms, and whispers softly that she doesn't know herself, but suddenly a flash of pain rushes through her. Her face. Patricia approaches and asks if he is okay. He quietly thanks her with a single word. Watching them, he internally wonders if there is some connection between him and the Scheipfen if she herself does not know what it could mean. He annoys her. She looks at him filled with deep anxiety and, eyes wide open, points at him as if warning. She pales and lowers her gaze, a tense expression of self-control frozen on her face. She tries to calm down, says she is fine, and asks to be left alone. For now, seeing Ima's suffering, Oren decides to stop the investigation for today. He orders Patricia to take him outside the ship and let him rest. Patricia nods, accepts the order, and understands that first and foremost she must take care of Ima. Outside on the rocky shore, he sits and watches Patricia embrace Ima, broken with grief. He is gnawed by the thought of his own lack of progress. The captain's law could explain both the origin of the ship and why Ima reacted so sharply and anxiously, but he found nothing of the sort. His thoughts are interrupted by a gleam on the dark, cracked ground. Something flashed right under his feet. He crouches and picks up a round metal object, turning it over in his hand. At first, he recognizes the intricate pattern and wonders, could this be some kind of coat of arms? It looks like a coat of arms. He clenches the emblem in his palm and a focused determination freezes on his face. He clearly understands how important this find could be. If he can decipher this symbol, he might take another step toward unraveling the deep secrets of Rosh Island. Standing in a field near the estate and clutching a hoe in his hand, Warren addresses Patrician himself. He announces the plan to start cultivating the surrounding land that very afternoon. Despite supplies from the kingdom, a local food source is a wise precaution. To confirm, he enthusiastically declares that she is fine and wants to help. Patricia anxiously asks if he really feels well enough and gently reminds him she can rest. She says that Oren applied healing magic on Harriet was supposed to help Smiles, thanks her teacher, and admits now she feels much better. As soon as the decision is made, the three get to work. Their master vigorously tills the dark soil. While he works, Oren weighs options. It is getting hotter, so tomatoes or eggplants are the best choice. And he understands a simple thing. First, the soil must be prepared and the seeds sown. Together they work and find joy in this labor. Patricia notices Ima's inexhaustible energy and his orange smile. Sand agrees, seeing that is truly good. The young islander continues working with a cheerful face. He falls silent for a moment and his thoughts again drift to the eerie shipwreck was that which brought him to them. On the way back to the capital, he decides to ask the king more about that event. Having taken a break from plowing, he tells the others that he will go gather firewood and materials for fertilizer and confidently adds he will return immediately. Then he turns and walks away from the field, heading into the dense forest bordering the estate. Making his way through the thickets, he suddenly stops. A sudden view stuns him, his eyes widen in disbelief, and he tries to understand what exactly lies ahead. He finds himself on the edge of a sheer cliff. The ground is torn off as if someone cut a stone wall from the sky. From the ledge, he hangs over the abyss and examines the unexpected work stretching below. Beneath it stretched a ruined portage and neglected. Worn wooden piers and stone foundations jutted into the sea like a wedge, a silent witness of the past forgotten on this seemingly untouched island. He stood among the ruins and stared at the discovery. It never occurred to him that such a place existed on the opposite bank from shipwreck, and that nowhere, by any sign, was there a single person in sight. It seemed strange to him that King Estrada had not yet uttered a word about such a thing. Even if the area was not very large, the evidence was clear. It had definitely once functioned as a port town. His investigation dragged on. He felt and examined the crumbling stone masonry. Judging by how the town had fallen into ruin, this place could have been decades old, so the construction might have started under the previous king. And it was completely inconceivable that the port had no connection to the shipwreck, and the current king did not know of its existence. Even before he managed to concentrate, the consequences clung to his thoughts with the most urgent question. Making his way back through the forest, he suddenly realized he had been so stubbornly heading to the port that he lost his way. Climbing out of the trees, he recognized familiar silhouettes and called out. His call was met with concern. Patricia and he, both dirtied from working the land, raised their heads and demanded to know where he had been, reproaching him for being late. He approached them just as Patricia had said. She felt something was wrong, so he himself did not come for a long time. Oren, looking at the plowed soil, asked if they had tended the field for him. Yes, for him, he smiled warmly. All his previous worries vanished from his mind for a moment. He sincerely thanked them both for their hard work. When dusk fell on the island, he noticed that they were both covered in mud. Go wash immediately, he said, and they gladly agreed. The day's work is done. The three returned to a quiet little house hidden among the trees. Its windows darken against the fading light. In a warm, steaming bath, Patricia finally relaxes after a long day, and M gently reaches out to rosy Patricia as if the very moment asks to slow the breath. But the silence is suddenly broken by Oren's voice from outside. He cheerfully offers to wash Patricia's back. She awkwardly mumbles that she is fine as is, her face flushing with embarrassment. Oren turns away from the bath and his thoughts instantly switch to the tasks ahead. First, he starts preparing dinner for the two who worked so hard, then focuses on what lies ahead. Tomorrow, they will set out for Estrada King. In a workshop filled with tools and alchemical equipment, Oren stands before a huge cauldron. It boils and bubbles. The preparation begins without delay. Somewhere in another workshop in a different studio, a young woman works tirelessly, her gaze fixed on a complex device before her. She is Wendell, a magical engineer of tools. Her concentration is broken by a familiar voice. A young man with light, spiky hair whom she calls Travis Senpai greets her and asks how his order is progressing. Wendell looks up. A faint smile appears on her face and she confirms that everything is ready. After that, she presents him with the fruit of her labor, an exquisitely crafted sword with an intricately decorated blade. Get out, he takes the weapon and a pure delight spreads across his face. He does not hold back and sprinkles compliments. He says that her skill is as sharp as ever, so it is not surprising, considering that she trained under the guidance of Master Oren. Oren, he continues to praise, reminding that she is the youngest in history to have cleared the third layer of the complex structure. Wendell brushes off the compliment with laughter, but Travis's attention has already shifted elsewhere. He points to a small sealed letter on her desk and asks if it is a cute letter with a mark. Letter? He moves closer, teasing boldly, and asks if it is a letter from the rent from her own golden generation. Wendell flushes with embarrassment, snatches the letter from his hands, and hotly denies that it is what he thinks. He also snaps back, calls him sly dog for hiding things himself. His gaze was fixed on the letter and a faint blush appeared on his cheeks while Travis leaned in and asked what was written there. The assistant was confused by such intrusion, stammered, and began to deny. Wendell was silent for a moment. He confirmed that he read it but deflected the question about what exactly was written there. In other places, the news of Oren's resignation was met with distrust. The official slammed his palm on the table and thundered that this was a colossal loss for the country, and that someone like Oren could not just. The blow was shared with Wendell's assistant. He agreed that this could not have happened without any reason. And her thoughts again drifted to Wendell's past. Another official recalled how he, a withdrawn child, sat quietly and dreamed of crafting something, then said that they even asked Oren to have a tough talk with the boy. The memory flared clearly. Oren arrived at the cluttered workshop of young Wendell. As soon as he announced that he was already there, the boy, without even turning from his desk, sharply ordered him leave, ignoring the dismissal, or ask if he likes making magical tools. Wendell admitted that he had no talent for either magic or fencing, so he did not want to go to school or get another perspective, so he explained, when you work hard on what you love and become better than anyone else, that is already a form of talent. With a gentle smile, he confirmed that Wendell has exactly that talent and offered him a place to hone it under his. Under the leadership, this invitation became a turning point. From that day, Wendell devoted himself to his work. He studied and worked tirelessly, and later left his old life behind to find his true. When he finally stopped, he began to sort out his current situation. Now he is the owner of a workshop specializing in magical instruments, and he earned this status entirely thanks to his mentor. Oren, his thoughts were interrupted by his companion, Travis. He raised a troubling event. He explained that due to recent changes in policy, many travelers are leaving the country and asked about leaving. Wendell confirmed. Travis meant legal amendments issued by the king. Because of these new decrees, a growing trend to devalue adventures was spreading worldwide. Across the country, Travis grimaced. He said that was exactly the reason, because most of his clients are adventurers. Wendell's face sharpened. He said that if so, then it is also his problem, not just. For others, the consequences of this departure were obvious. Once a bustling traveler's town garden, a former center of life and trade, turned into emptiness and completely lost. Travis ran his hand through his hair, swallowed his disappointment, and wondered what the country was doing, especially after what happened to their teacher. Then Wendell asked if Travis was thinking of moving to another country. With a heavy look, Travis admitted, yes, essentially he had already started thinking FG. When the country was in the midst of unrest, the memory of Master Oren's departure cast a long shadow. A lonely figure in a cloak walked away into the now empty F. This realization finally cemented his determination. Sitting at the table, Wendell lifted his work protective glasses and pushed them up onto his forehead. His face was composed. For Master Oren and for the country in general, he concluded, he too must act. When a new day begins, Oren and Patricia finalize their plans. Everything is ready. Oren declares that he will set out for Estrada Royal Capital. Patricia agrees, saying that a lot of time has passed since they were on the mainland. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by a cheerful "good morning." A voice bursts through the door. She immediately states that she wants to join and asks to be taken with them. Patricia expresses concern. She asks Oren if it is really possible to take him off the island so abruptly. She looks at Oren with wide-open and determined eyes and says that she wants to see with her own eyes the world from which he and Patricia came. Oren agrees but sets a condition. She must follow his rules. No deviations from them and no trips with strangers. He is even pleased by this. She playfully retorts that he treats her like a little child. Hearing their conversation, Patricia smiles warmly. She seems to foresee better to be safe than sorry later. Then Oren raises a quite practical question about clothing. Her island outfit will stand out too much in the capital. He suggests borrowing from Patricia and receives an immediate, enthusiastic agreement. Very soon the girls appear again. Patricia is already changed into ordinary clothes and Oren himself is in a simple dress. He exclaims how happy he is to wear Patricia's things and continuously showers both with compliments. When everyone is ready, Oren announces he will lead by a special route, the tide path, because the water level is low now. With cores set to maximum, the group moves on boots press into the wet sand of tidal shoals. They land on a deserted beach. Patricia looks around and notices they have reached the mainland in the outskirts of the royal capital. Meanwhile, he turns to her and warns, the city has a completely different scale than her village, so she must be careful not to get lost. His words pass through him and he quiets his anxiety, pondering the very thought of getting lost. He twitched when he suddenly grabbed her by the hand and he joyfully declared, "You have to hold on like that so you don't get lost." While he agrees with her opinion, Patricia sharply interjects, "Hey, just like that." However, he simply confirms, if she holds on tight, she will be safe. Patricia asks directly, or at least with a hint, what the problem is, and honestly admits that she is not as unfamiliar with cities as he is. But this is her second trip to the capital and she can get lost too. She reminds him of his own advice. Precautionary risks must be prevented before they happen. Then Patricia states that her decision is completely rational and without any hidden motive. Before Oren can fully process this in his mind, she firmly takes his other hand. Now he is awkwardly stuck between two women, each holding one of his hands. And it seems he even likes it. There is something truly funny about it all. After a short pause, the three stop in the same silent agreement and head into the city as they are. Walking the lively streets, Patricia could not tear her eyes away from the sights. She had never seen anything like it and exclaims in delight, "This is a real city and it is incredible." Their unnatural but oddly assembled posture immediately catches glances. On the street, people murmur about how closely the trio sticks together, and one man even asks if they are family. I overhear the comment and burst out laughing. I joyfully tell Patricia that people think so because they look like a family. But this thought, it seems, affects her. Patricia silently turns over in her mind why exactly this annoys her. Their journey through the city ends where they stop in front of a huge royal castle. Oren announces their arrival, freezes, and impatiently, almost teasingly, looks up at the massive structure, eyes burning. She innocently asks, if the castle is so big, is the king the same? Oren quietly laughs and denies it. They are led through the corridor of the royal castle, luxuriously decorated, shining. I am stunned by the splendor, exclaims how everything sparkles and how incredibly beautiful it is, and calls Oren in excitement. The royal knight gestures them forward, greets and confirms that the arrangements for their audience with the king are ready. Oren responds only with a brief "thank you." "Thank you." As they approach the throne room doors, he turns over his own thoughts. This second reception by the king may finally bring them one step closer to uncovering the truth about Rakiel. Meanwhile, in the valley region of the southern kingdom, a completely different event unfolds among the geodists. A colossal wyvern lies dead on the ground. Its massive form alone is overwhelming, and nearby stands a small figure. The invisible observer does not hide their shock and tries to understand what could have brought down such a creature. Eventually, a squad of royal knights in full armor arrives at the scene. One of them, looking at everything and realizing that nothing can be changed anymore, exclaims in surprise, could the one responsible have just arrived? The woman in a wide witch's hat, addressed, introduces herself as Jacqueline, the Witch of 1,000 Faces. She scolds the knights for being late and declares, She defeated the beast herself because if the road had been blocked, she wouldn't have had time to get her favorite tea blend from the leaves. For a moment, her power is revealed. The winged lizard is caught in a vortex of colossal might, and its body is fiercely twisted to the point of madness. Nearby stands Jacqueline in another, more ethereal form with an intricate headdress. She calmly watches as the creature dies. The knights freeze in awe. One of them recognizes her by her full title and admits that such power is entirely expected from the witch with 1,000 faces, Jeff. Another knight nods and recounts legends about her. They say she freely controls all types of magic, has an extraordinarily large natural mana reserve, and that no one can match her. He honestly says, this is his first meeting, but there can be no doubt she has the aura of one of the legendary golden generations. Spinning in the sky on her own staff, Jacqueline embodies the very essence of her reputation. They say she was born to be the whip. In the distance, under the cloudy night sky, stands a majestic, multi-tiered manor. Inside, the witch Jacqueline receives a message. A small mechanical bird flies up and brings a letter, and she notes with surprise that it is from Wendell, although he almost never sends letters. When she reads its content, her face twists in complete disbelief. The letter says that Oren Sensei is retiring. This name strikes a nerve. He is the only one who ever could. Neil, the news triggers a brutal reaction in her. She explodes wildly, a blizzard breaks out from the snow, and then a flash of primal magical energy bursts from her body, scattering the air around the academy. Building, the mention of being brought to her knees instantly triggers a vivid memory of her own power. She recalls a past demonstration on the academy's training field. Then, still a novice, she effortlessly managed to defeat the magical studies instructor, and everyone watching was stunned by her devastating assault. However, at that time she was a student, with long, light brown hair and a sense of complete, unwavering confidence. She walked the academy corridors declaring that she had nothing to learn from anyone weaker than herself. And even when another student shouted at her that she missed a class, she still remained a student with the same long, light brown hair and the same total, unshakable self-satisfaction. Once again, a student, a confident young man with tousled light hair named Travis, caught up with her. He directly challenged her to come out and fight a man. He laid out his terms with a disarming smile. If he won, she would have to join his class. The challenge was announced, and it led to a stunning duel that shook the arena. But the result was completely the opposite. The duel ended with Jacqueline lying sprawled on the cracked stone floor and her weapon just a few steps away. She could only freeze and look up in shock, and the thought struck her head again and again. Impossible. I couldn't even. He stood over her not with contempt but with gentle encouragement. Travis told her that defeat is not something to be ashamed of, but merely a harbinger of her next evolution. His words seemed to break through her shock as her wide-open eyes looked at him. While the news of Orna's resignation spins in her head, an image of their legendary team, the Golden Generation, forms in her thoughts. There they were in their prime, Oren, Travis, Wendell, Elise, and herself, a gathering of unparalleled talents. Memory tears a voice from behind. She stands on the balcony, and a man in armor approaches her, looking intently as if it is immediately clear she definitely received something. The letter. He reveals himself the Holy Knight of Blitz. He greets her, says that quite some time has passed, and notices how she is shaking so much that she doesn't even manage to notice him. Notice him? Let's continue. Judging by her reaction, she has already heard the news. Stunned, Jacqueline finally registers his presence and exclaims his name. Before she can say more, another voice bursts in. Wendell states that the details about their former teacher will have to be postponed, and says the very presence of the festive night is enough for him to guess the reason for this gathering. Blitz confirms Wendell's suspicion. Not only Jacqueline but also Elise, Wendell himself, and he came to the call. He wonders aloud what matter could require the entire Golden Generation. Gather yourselves. Jacqueline, whose face is shadowed by the brim of her hat, asks if it was His Majesty King Jaides who summoned them. Well, let's check. And seeing no other matters, she urges them on. He urges them on and moves forward, adding a sharp remark. Supposedly, Jacqueline is known for ignoring summons unless it is a matter related to Oren Sensei. A sharp huh, and Jacqueline crosses her arms. Her resolve strengthens. She declares that she intends to question the king himself about their former teacher. From the side, Wendell voices his agreement. Yes, he simply says. Prepare yourselves. The Golden Generation quartet, Wendell, Jacqueline, Elise, and Blitz, together with a common goal. Their single thought is simple: they will go to the king. In the royal castle of the Geodo's kingdom, an important event is underway, summoned by the king himself. Inside, they are preparing the audience. They note, former students of Sage Orin, although they are still young now, support the nation with their exceptional talents. The group known as the Golden Generation has finally gathered. Lies, the saint, Wendell, engineer of magical instruments. They are united by Jacqueline, the Witch of 1,000 Faces, and Blitz, the Holy Knight of the Geodo's Kingdom. When all four walk through the castle corridors, they involuntarily become the center of attention. It is extremely rare for all of them to come together like this. Lies quietly says that she owes everything to her teacher. He brought them to these positions. Blitz, reserved and without unnecessary words, adds the key point. Their mentor, Orin Sensei, quarreled with the director administrator and after that left the country. Jacqueline states if their teacher's resignation turns out to be not quite as it seems, then even the king will not escape her verdict. Wendell agrees, noting the oppressive feeling that the entire royal Geodes has recently been moving in some strange direction. Well, let's continue moving forward, he said, adding that everything is arranged precisely because of this. Let them act for the sake of their teacher and for the future of the country. As soon as he finished the phrase, the huge doors before them suddenly opened. On the throne before them sits King Estrada. He surveys the gathered crowd and warmly welcomes them, rejoicing at their arrival. The king begins with the main point. He announces that he wants to entrust them with a matter of colossal importance for the country's future. Blitz, as the group's representative, asks for a more detailed explanation. The king explains, this year at the Royal Magic Sword Academy, a group of students appeared so talented that it is said they can even compete with the Golden Generation. He continues, highlighting among them the most exceptional, Kyle Arnalord, son of the director Rose Arnalord. The king calls him a true prophecy that happens once every decade. Hearing this name, Jacqueline turns to her companions and asks if they have heard of him. Wendell admits no, and Elise only confirms this name is also unknown to her. And Blitz is silent, yet still recalls the letter from Grover. It said that not only Kyle Arnalord but also several teachers under the influence of the Lady Gymnasium student were adjusting grades for certain children from noble families. Unaware of the internal conflict, the king officially announces a request. He wants to appoint the Golden Generation as special instructors to guide these talented students, especially Kylie, in the right path. Jacqueline sharply exhales in shock. She clearly feels the king made this decision without any prior negotiations. By royal command, Blitz steps forward and, speaking firmly, respectfully refuses. The king's face twists with rage. He roars in disbelief, asks how they dared to ignore the royal order, and commands his guards to seize the departing knight. When the king returns, Blitz calmly clarifies the exact reason for this request and the king is momentarily speechless. Youth Jacqueline appears before the throne. She declares that since Blitz refused His Majesty's request, naturally all the others refuse as well. Announcing her departure, she challenges the stunned king, let him try to stop them. Leaving the throne room, Knight Blitz rushes swiftly down the palace's luxurious corridor, his thoughts wildly bustling. He recalls a letter from his elder Grover. He warned that power in the kingdom is being gathered and handed over to the leader teacher. He lets it pass through him and thinks about what is really happening. At first he dismissed the warning as incredible, but looking at the king's strange proposal, he now understands it must be true. True understanding hardens into determination. He concludes they will have to start an investigation, and the thought spins in his head that the kingdom's recent moves looked ominous and dangerous. He suspects the exile of his sensei may be connected to this because he now stands alone with his own thoughts. However, the voice notes, such a direct, fair response is exactly what one should expect from an overly straightforward division of intentions. A comment comes from one of his companions, a woman with short hair and goggle glasses. She praises his courage, saying he boldly spoke out against the king. Nearby, the hypocrite Elise smiles and adds that he truly hates injustice. Next, Jacqueline shifts her gaze to Blitz. She admits his honesty is commendable, but his defiant stance before the king is unsettling. She prompts him for an answer. If Blitz is a knight serving the kingdom, he surely knows something the others do not. The woman in glasses agrees and says that his predictability is exactly what she fears. He might do something reckless. Again, Elise lets out a quiet chuckle and says that he has always been like that, even then, when they were students. Feeling their shared anxiety, Blitz turns around and asks one simple question directly. Will you stop? Clicking her tongue, Jacqueline clarifies their position. Quite the opposite, she declares. Everyone says they will follow his recklessness. Outside of her, Eliz and their other companion confidently nod towards Agro. Accompanied by her companions, the witch stood with the rest of the Golden Generation before a pair of large double doors. The decision regarding further actions was made, and Oren slightly turned to the group and said a simple word of gratitude, "Thank you." Thus officially began their investigation in the kingdom of Estrada. It began, their steps echoed in unison, and they continued moving forward. Their path led to the royal castle of the kingdom of Estrada. In the vast throne hall, Oren, Jacqueline, and Elise knelt stood before the monarch, their first audience with the king, a moment that could prompt the revelation of the mystery of Roch Island. Looking at the figure on the throne, Oren broke the official silence. "Long time no see," he said respectfully. "Your Majesty." In the giant throne hall, King Estrada looks down from his throne at the figures on the palace stairs. He speaks directly to Oren and asks, "Who is this young woman walking beside him?" Oren solemnly introduces her as Imu and explains that she lives in Paddle Village on Roch Island. The revelation shocks the official from the nearest court, who exclaims in disbelief and wonders how there can be inhabitants on an island considered uninhabited. Then the king shifts his gaze to the nervous Imu. He presses her, demanding an answer. If islanders were here, why had they never once tried to establish contact with the mainland? Imu chokes on her anxiety and can only stammer uncertainly, hesitating. But before the royal interrogation can fully unfold, Patricia steps forward and stops beside to calm Imu, assuring that the people at court are not her enemies. Beside her, Elise responds with a gentle, supportive smile. Oren thanks Patricia for her kindness. Then he explains to the court, it seems the islanders really had previously made contact with people from the mainland. In response, a grateful smile lights up Ima's face. The king found it hard to believe what he heard and, rubbing his chin, fell into thoughtful silence. Then he said directly, there are no official records of any such contact. Contacts or meetings during the contact were probably unofficial. Then he adds to the king that he has 2 more additional matters to report in connection with this situation. His curiosity sparked, the king leaned forward a little and gave permission to continue the report. "Go ahead," he ordered, "let's listen." While Oren prepares to elaborate, the king silently reviews the key points in his mind: the shipwreck and the port town. He begins the explanation and shows that the shipwreck site on the mainland is in a blind spot. The diagram shows the cabin, the port town, and the specific channel Minoishi Tabigachi, so the geography of the incident becomes clear immediately. Then he continues the report. If the wrecked ship had been a real merchant ship, the kingdom would definitely have noticed its disappearance and the fact that it never arrived. King Estrada reflects and suggests that due to frequent storms around Roch Island, the ship might have simply run aground during one of them. To support his conclusions, he shows an item he found in the rocky area near the shipwreck. The king takes the artifact, a metallic emblematic badge, and examines it carefully, as if reading a pattern. Oran meanwhile asks if His Majesty knows anything about this coat of arms. After a minute of thought, the king admits he does not recognize the insignia and quietly confirms he has no knowledge about them. When the king shifts his gaze to his knight Glover, he gives 2 orders. Immediately find out which country this coat of arms belongs to, and thoroughly check all merchant ships that operated according to the rules but never reached Estrada. Glover confirms the orders. His orders are carried out. The king again turns his gaze to Oren and, preparing to discuss the matter with the port town, notices a focused expression on his face and asks if Oren has any thoughts on the matter. Oren replies yes and names a shocking fact. During the previous king's reign, a port was planned to be built on the same island. The king finds this strange. He says he heard the plan was cancelled, or he confirms that this was indeed the case. Oren thinks further. If the port was really built, there should be documents from the planning stage, and he declares that his side will investigate this matter, including the shipwreck. Later, Oren returns together with Patricia and Imu and sincerely thanks the king for the cooperation. The 3 sit nearby and wait for the investigation results. He decides to postpone their case with the king for 1 day, and he himself continues to puzzle over the inconsistency. The previous king built the port city, but the current king was never properly informed. Oren turns to Imu, who immediately agrees to set off. As soon as they leave the royal presence, King Estrada holds a final ceremonial farewell and wishes Imu a pleasant time in her country. Her cheeks flush with a shy smile, and she willingly nods, yes. Now outside, Warren returns to his companions. From this moment on, the 3 of them, he himself, Patricia, and Imu, will continue to deal with this case together. He notes that there is still time before the tidal path to the island appears again, so he suggests looking around the market until that happens. At this idea, a bright sparkle appears on Patricia's and Imu's faces. Emotions choke Imu as soon as she notices an interesting shop, so she immediately declares that she wants to go there. Patricia gently restrains her, warning, it is dangerous to suddenly disappear from the place. Oren silently and unconditionally agrees. The team walks through the lively marketplace, a cobblestone street full of merchants and buyers. While they walk, Oren's gaze involuntarily draws to a jewelry display in one of the kiosks. He stops and secretly turns toward his curiosity. His eyes widen sharply, full of disbelief. Among the trinkets, he notices a pendant with a familiar coat of arms, the same emblematic sign from the badge that he. Without any hesitation, he buys the thing. The seller looks a bit surprised by such a quick deal and confirms it, while Oren insists that this is exactly what he decided. The choice was simple, to keep the medallion or to approach the shopkeeper and ask if he made it himself. The man shook his head no. He said that he found the medallion many years ago on the nearest beach where debris was washed ashore. The ship ran aground and the entire cargo was brought to the shore. He leaned forward, interest flared instantly. Seller, he began, where is that beach? Tell me, where is it? Nearby, Patricia noticed how much he was pressing the conversation and said that he had caught a genuine interest. Following the shopkeeper's directions, they reached a deserted coast. The shore was a graveyard, splinters of wood, broken cargo. Small remnants of a large vessel had broken against the rocks and were scattered mercilessly. Making their way through the debris, Imu looked around, a question froze in her gaze. Oren measured the ruins, listening to the loud noise, but saw no objects that could serve as a clue. Patricia voiced her thoughts and suggested, if they could solve the mystery of the emblem they bought, then perhaps they would also find the country of origin of the shipwreck. She added that this might also unravel the mystery of the port town that the former king had planned, or with a nod confirmed, agreeing that he was right despite their hopes. Such an avalanche of debris had become too heavy a burden. Oren slid his gaze over the scattered boards and boxes and feverishly searched for any hint that could break through this chaos. His eyes stopped on one area on a piece of wood, a flat board half buried in the sand with dark markings. He crouched down for a closer look. Along the worn surface ran a series of unfamiliar signs, sharp, angular, in a script as if assembled from sharp edges. This is it, he whispered to himself. He examined the inscription himself. Due to the small number of signs, he quickly understood this was not a sentence but probably some kind of symbol. Holding the board outstretched in his hands, he turned to his companions. When Patricia pointed to the piece of wood, Oren declared this could become a hit. Patricia sharply raised her head and her eyes flashed with impatience. She leaned forward and asked, can you guess what the F? She listened attentively, quietly confirming understanding, while Oren held the inlaid board and confidently stated that he would use these strange symbols to track the ship up. He suggested discussing it again once they returned home, but his practical advice was cut off when Imu suddenly screamed in alarm. She pointed out, if they did not hurry, the tidal path would disappear. The clue turned out to be unexpected, and now they had to win a race against the receding water. Returning, Oren quietly surveys the room. Patricia and Imu are sleeping nearby, peacefully covered with one blanket. Later, he sits at the table and before him is a piece of wood from the shipwreck. He only cracks his fingers and begins to decipher the strange text. He looks closely at the inscription, noticing unfamiliar symbols. At first, it seems to him that this script came from southern countries. This thought drives him to a book. While he recognizes the inscription as the official language of the Reason Kingdom, he is suddenly enlightened. He recalls this very country was shown in the news when their princess disappeared. His eyes widen as he weighs the consequences. A vivid picture of the shipwreck flashes before his eyes. He wonders if there could be a connection between that wreck and the missing princess of Reason. But then he quickly catches a flaw in his theory. If the ship with the royal person really disappeared, the kingdom would immediately launch a massive search. He concludes that the broader political situation might be just a distraction, and the real clue to solving the mystery, in his opinion, is hidden in this very part of what he sees. With renewed determination, he returns to the book and the script, studying the details under the glow of the burning crystal. His focused efforts are not in vain. From the inscription, he successfully deciphers one word: Osborne. He leans back and runs the discovery over in his mind, wondering if it is someone's name and who exactly stands behind it, still a complete mystery. He decides that further guesses will not change anything now and closes the case. The investigation of the kingdom's affairs will have to be postponed. Switching his attention, he leads Patricia and Emu to the beach, announcing, before they resume the island investigation, he wants to test everyone's skills by organizing training. Both girls immediately agree with enthusiasm. While they prepare, Emu lays everything out for Patricia. This training is not for fun. She is convinced that by deepening their relationship, these two will become indispensable allies both for the continent and for the island, and Patricia seems to take this very much to heart. Oren, already shirtless and fully ready for battle, declares that he will start with Patricia. She nervously asks him to be lenient with her. With a sharp scream, she suddenly closes the distance and throws a quick strike. Oren easily dodges, and inside he notes, her attack made at speed already shows that the academy lessons were not in vain. But the first burst of energy lasts only briefly. In a moment her strength disappears, and she breathes heavily from exhaustion. After that, only after 15 minutes the spark fades. Patricia sits on the ground trying to recover, and Oren immediately emphasizes her main problem is obvious. Lack of endurance. She only weakly nods. He presses further, asking if Patricia can still move. She assures that everything is fine, but Oren does not stop. He continues to examine and finds out what exactly happened to her magical output once her physical energy was exhausted. She begged, and at that moment her eyes sharply widened from the hint. Noticing how he turns it into smiles and challenges, she immediately launched an attack, trying to blast her magic at him at full power. Holding back her determination, Patricia finally agrees, one single shot and that's it. She begins to gather strength, preparing to summon lightning magic, while Oren watches satisfied with her response. She closes her eyes and pulls together the remnants of magical energy. The sudden burst of power is much greater than she expected. The air around crackles, making her shudder from the unexpected impact. With a determined shout, she releases the spell. From her outstretched hand bursts a huge ball of lightning. From afar, Emu freezes at this and finally realizes the magic level here is completely different from the magic Patricia used against her mother. At a colossal energy discharge, Oren calmly raises his own hand. Arcs of lightning close before him, mirroring Patricia, gathering in a cluster and tear forward to intercept the attack. Two spells collide and extinguish each other with a dazzling flash of neutralized power. Patricia growls through the tension, eyes wide open in disbelief. Oren smiles, his hands still spark with residual energy, and he praises her for the progress. She can only freeze in shock that he stopped her full-strength lightning attack and with an absolutely even discharge. She thanks him kindly, but with her face down admits, still nowhere near his level of skill. He places a calming palm on her head and, smiling gently, says that she cannot so easily surpass him. Easily, after Patricia's test is over, Oren shifts his attention to Emu, who is already ready. He announces that now it's her turn and asks if she is prepared. She answers confidently, of course. He orders her to approach seriously, no jokes. She nods and, without hesitation, flies forward, rushing from the open area straight into the nearest forest. She tears through the trees with impressive speed, winding her way skillfully. Oren watches impressed and recalls her fight with the turtle monster, noting her natural agility. In a moment the distance disappears and she delivers a powerful kick. He blocks the strike with his forearm and feels the pressure is strangely heavy. Inside, he gives her praise. A true talent, she reads his movements and responds instantly. Emu does not stop, pushing off his hand. Her gaze is determined and she declares that this is not the end yet. However, after blocking the last strike, Oren smiles warmly and stops the training. He announces, "All right, let's stop at D." He shifts his gaze to Emu, sitting on the sandy ground, and evaluates her performance. He notes, overall the movements are still awkward, but she has potential. With the future she can become something incredible. Training, but Patricia, disappointed by the praise for Emu, lets out an irritated sigh and thinks that none of her own attacks actually landed. Or extending her hand, Emu tells her not to say that she really did well. Emu, smiling broadly nearby, agrees and adds that Patricia's gait impressed Patricia. Movements, their sudden encouragement momentarily stuns Patricia. She freezes, not uttering a word. Suddenly, a male voice sounds from the forest edge. He greets them and acknowledges their hard work. Emu's face lights up. She recognizes him and exclaims, "Dad!" She runs to her father. Oren, surprised, asks what happened, and Emu explains. Her father scared her by appearing so unnoticed. Suddenly, her father, dressing Oren, says that it's normal and asks if he can speak with him alone. For a moment, later two men sit at the table. Imu's father directly asks about his daughter's combat capability. Oren looks at him and says, "Wonderful, that's the only word for it." Then he declares that from now on he will teach Imu fencing with swordsmanship. This announcement completely throws Imu's father off balance. Frozen, the restrained silence makes Oren ask if everything is all right. The man quickly recovers, brushes off the concern as nothing, and shifts the conversation to the main reason for what happened. Their meeting, he looks intently at Oren and says he wants to borrow his wisdom. As soon as he says there is one thing he wants Oren to consider, the request becomes more precise and weighty. For the man, this assignment feels like an official request for investigation not only from the kingdom but also from the islanders as well. On the sun-drenched island, right on the shore, Imu with long light hair joyfully announces her return to the straw hut and calls her father. A muscular man in a grass skirt comes out to meet her and warmly welcomes her home. Nearby, Oren questions Imu's father about that mysterious object he mentioned. The father thanks Oren for coming to investigate, and Oren replies he himself is very interested in it. He gestures for the group to follow him and says, "This thing is something no one in the village has ever seen." Because of this, fearing the unknown, they did not dare to move it carelessly. The man leads Oren, Patricia, and Imu away from the village into the dense forest thickets. They come out onto a rocky clearing near a stream, where among pale stones unnaturally frozen small dark objects lie. Oren and Patricia lean closer and Imu's father points to one of them, a small black cube. "This is it," he confirms. Oren's gaze becomes sharp, focused. Oren kneels by the cube and observes from a few steps away. The father cautiously asks if it is dangerous. Oren, without taking his eyes off the object, calmly replies, "Everything is fine." He picks up the small black object, clamps it between his fingers, and examines it carefully. Then he raises his eyes and confidently announces, "This is a magical tool." A magical tool, by definition, is a special object created by filling it with a significant amount of magical power. The word echoes in surprise in Patricia, while Imu quietly murmurs about magical power. Oren, not looking away from the cube, adds excitedly, "This is truly a very rare specimen." He confirmed her theory by addressing the islander Imu. Patricia, standing nearby, aptly guessed, "The magical tool allows anyone to effectively use magic." Continuing the explanation, he specified, "Such tools have magical circles, which is why they are so difficult to make and rarely appear on the market." The islander became interested and asked what kind of magic this specimen conceals. That is exactly how he deduced its purpose. "This is a spatial magical tool," he announced and explained. "You just need to pour magical power into it, and inside you can store much more than its small size suggests." To prove his point before all the gathered islanders and Patricia, he simply said, "Let me show you." He focused his intent, and around him, a barely noticeable aura of magical energy began to form. Then the young sage placed a small black cube on the large wineskin. As soon as he directed his power, a complex magical sigil flared up, and the wineskin began to warp. It was being pulled into the tiny object. The effect was such that Sir James froze in complete disbelief and kept repeating how this could even be possible, until someone calmly explained, "The infused magical power creates a pocket dimension inside the box." That demonstration raised a new question. A local island man aloud wondered why such a valuable item was simply thrown into the river, and this prompted Patricia to suggest that the source was somewhere upstream. Patricius excitedly seized the idea and declared that he wants to trace the origin of this object, then looked at the river source. Ahead, upstream, lies to the east, so he suggests going and checking everything. Here, in the very proposal, Imu's hand sharply shot up. "I'm going too," she declared stubbornly, which surprised Oren, who asked again if she planned to join. She shines with excitement, declares her determination to learn everything about the outside world. Islander man listens to her and admits her intention is simple understanding. When they were taking everything apart, his voice calls the last advice, asks to be careful. Heating up his words, the trio Warren, Patricia, and Imu enter dense, unfamiliar forests and begin moving upstream. They make their way through dense thickets near the stream. Imu's gaze darts in different directions, catching new scenes with surprise and caution, while Patricia and Oren stay focused solely on the path. Her gaze fixed ahead, she reads the road while the group presses on. The steps absorb the silence, and the noise vanishes into the forest darkness. Suddenly she stops, stretches out her hand, and points at something hidden behind the trees. she calls out, and her question hangs in the air for a moment. In a moment there where she points with a gesture or through the thickets where someone responds. A smile blooms on his face as soon as he confirms their find with one word, Jack. His discovery is a lonely, dilapidated wooden building. Time gnaws at its structure and he notices that it looks rather creepy. Having long looked at the building, Patricia voices her anxiety. There is something eerie about it. Emu agrees and adds that an inevitable evil is felt. Oren remains pragmatic. He notices that, fortunately, there are no monsters nearby and suggests searching the building for clues about the origin of the magical instrument while he pushes the door. The doors opened. When Oren and his companions stepped inside, they were met with complete ruin. The walls were cracked and stained, and garbage littered the floor, eliciting surprised exclamations from them. Terrible consequences promised nothing good. Realizing the picture, Oren felt his thoughts racing. He noticed the structure looked much older than both the port town and the shipwreck. He was troubled by the thought, could it have been built even before the reign of the previous king? This possibility deeply touched him. Feeling the tension, Patricia turned to him and, calling his title with excitement, addressed him once again. Then her attention was drawn to something on the floor. "Look at this," she urged. Oren approached and identified the find as some kind of document. He complained that it had crumbled and decayed so much that most of the text had become illegible, although he could barely make out what was written in the remnants found. He squinted at the faded manuscript and slowly reread the two phrases he could make out. Osborne. Rydia and Patricia immediately asked if it was a person's name. Oren confirmed, most likely yes. And then he suddenly realized the name Osborne matches what was written on the fragment he found. Emu, who was quietly listening, remembered the Woodpias from the mainland. Patricia, glancing between them, voiced what was on both their minds. What does? Oren's face froze in determination. He stated that the name Osborne Rydia is the key to unraveling the island's mysteries. For this, according to him, they would need to investigate a series of events related to this person. He glanced toward the sea and the entire island emerged before his ice end concluded that they would need a few more hands for such an investigation. 1 week later, after the audience with King Judith, the investigation into suspicious movements in the country does not subside. Golden Generation is conducting parallel checks and an intelligence report from the Frontier Knights has just been completed. In a well-furnished room, Jacqueline, a witch with 1,000 faces, sits opposite Blitz and begins the analysis. She asks how his part of the investigation went. Noticing his sullen expression, Jacqueline does not back down and squeezes an answer out of him. What happened? Blitz admits he went to see the very same students whom the king praised so highly. Jacqueline presses further and demands his assessment as a knight. Blitz confirms that he saw their weapons training, but disappointment is hard to hide in his voice. His verdict is devastating. He states that their fencing skills were worse than a theatrical performance and very dubious at that. She agrees with his assessment. After sipping some tea, Jacqueline confidently guesses, top classes of royal level must be filled with children of well-bred lords and ladies. Blitz confirms her guess and adds that his own intelligence showed students with much better abilities are sent to lower classes. He hands her a document dated this year, intended for announcing grades. When Jacqueline scans it, the conclusion emerges on its own. Grades are determined not by ability but by family status. While she processes this, a small detail catches her attention. The announcement is delayed like never before. And as soon as she connects the time coincidences into one line, she is hit by a sudden, shocking suspicion. The date is 1 day later than the day Professor Oren retired. He confirms her suspicion with a grim expression. Blitz says it looks like the Academy deliberately delayed time until the professor left his post. The last piece of the puzzle finally falls into place. Jacqueline declares that now the truth about the wrongful dismissal of Professor Oren leaves no room for doubt. Sitting opposite at the table, Blitz immediately got to the point and addressed her by name. He explained that the day before he received a report from the Knight Commander, but there is something else extremely important, something he must inform her about. The night of the seam brought shock. Jihadist kingdom plans to start a war of aggression soon. The announcement hit Jacqueline as if with a physical slap. She screamed from incredible confusion and demanded to know what the hell was happening to their country. He confirmed her worst fears and added that even the Knight Commander himself might be involved. Jacqueline correctly recalled, the current commander is the husband of Headmistress Rose. Her response was immediate and sharp. If it had come to this, then simply leaving the country to the point that she promised to set a magical trap to ruin the night. This decisive proposal was met not with refusal but with a quiet, sincere thank you from Blitz, and Jacqueline was completely confused by his reaction. She jerked back, sharply snapping. He scares her and even demands an explanation of what is wrong with him. Blitz admitted, when he thought he was ready to do everything necessary to improve the kingdom, his determination was actually fake. He continued to equivocate. The heart hesitates because he still wants to believe in his country. And after her honest, unvarnished opinion, all explanations became a real relief for him. He also thanked her for always agreeing to his requests regarding monster subjugation, calling it a huge help. While he spoke, confused, Jacqueline silently wondered why it turned out that she only took requests from him. From him, embarrassed, Jacqueline turns away from Blitz and insists that she is fine when he asks what is on her mind. Meanwhile, somewhere on Roch Island under the bright sun and the rustling of palms, a question about Exiled hung in the air. Oren, standing next to Patricia and Emu, gives an answer. The person King Estrada spoke of will lead the investigation. He has already decided. He explains that this will be their first meeting with them. Standing nearby, Patricia admits she is a little nervous before this conversation. To him, looking towards the sea, he quietly guessed who she would become. Since the kingdom chose her once, she could be as strong as the sea. Night, her chain of thoughts breaks when she notices something on the horizon. Screaming, she points towards the water and asks if it is a. Like a ship, the young woman arrived from a small boat that had already docked. She apologizes for making them wait and introduces herself as Claire Sandar. She says that from today she will be in charge of the investigation on Roch Island. Oren fixes his gaze on the newcomer, a barely noticeable surprise on his face, and he lets out a questioning sound. She shudders Claire and she immediately apologizes for staring. She explains, Mr. Grover spoke very highly of him and she is glad to see now that they have met. He seems like a pleasant person, or she just awkwardly orders herself to relax. Relaxing, Claire regains her balance and officially introduces herself to the group, or responds to them properly. Next are Patricia and Emu. When the introductions end, they all together show how eager they are to work as one team. He calms down because he sees in her the same old interest in the island. Claire explains, actually Roch Island enchanted her since childhood and she studies it. Somewhere there, she quickly adds with a barely noticeable blush that it might just be a personal hobby or ordinary curiosity. But despite everything, Claire insists, if she can be of any use she will gladly help. To help the group or to have her accept the offer as soon as possible, saying that it would be a huge support to have more people with the same dedication nearby. Claire reacts with surprise. Delight manages to speak, and Emu sneaks up from the side and calls to stop them. Their attention, she approaches Claire and directly asks how she sleeps. Night, hearing the question, Oren turns to Claire to discuss her accommodation. He confirms that she will live in their house and asks if that is okay with her. But he immediately warns the house is quite old. Old-fashioned, with a bright smile and lively gesture. She brushes off his concern as if it were a trifle and declares that everything will be fine with her after all. She is used to communal apartments. The news provokes different reactions. Patricia is noticeably surprised. She mumbles to herself that another woman will join them in the same house. Oran, on the contrary, looks pleased and exclaims that it will be more fun. Oran simply agrees, saying, when the overnight stay is settled, Warren announces, it's time to move on. He suggests setting off deeper into the island immediately, and Claire confidently gives the signal. About the agreement, just as they are ready to leave, she stops him and makes him remember one more task. She says that she actually has something to deliver, an item entrusted to her by the Mr. Grover's announcement about a delivery from Mr. Grover caught Oren by surprise. He glanced at the message, and his look mixed curiosity and confusion as he processed the name from Grover. In the shining crystal ball, Oren Edwards' face sharply appeared. From the other end of the magical connection, Grover Hurston's voice called, Professor Oren. Oren smiles, confirming that the sound quality is indeed good, and he hurries to inform Grover that it seems their experiment has finally succeeded. Oren turns to Claire Sandar. She stands nearby holding a small case. He thanks her for the delivery and she clarifies Mr. Grover asked to bring it. The device turns out to be a magical means of communication. As a prototype, Oren asked Grover to prepare it to establish smoother reporting between the island and the kingdom. It allows conversations over vast distances. although Oren hopes that the magical engineer Wendell will be able to improve the design. Through the crystal, Grover asks if it was Oren's first time when he eats Claire and if there were any problems. Oren glances down at the device and confidently replies, "Everything went flawlessly, there were no problems." Grover breathes a sigh of relief just as clearly as Patricia further comments how beautiful Claire is and how well she already gets along with both her and Emo. After the initial checks, Grover's voice becomes more serious. He shifts the conversation to the main report about a man named Osborne Rydia, the very one Oren asked about when he first applied to become a researcher. Grover leans forward and listens carefully, then asks, "Did he find anything?" From the communication device on the table, his voice sounds dry, "Yes." His gaze sharpens abruptly as soon as he catches the first piece of information. Osborne Rydia was once the Vice Knight commander of Reason Kingdom. Grover continues the report from the document and reveals, about 15 years ago Osborne suddenly disappeared, or more precisely, has been missing for longer. He breaks off the phrase and asks what he is doing now. Grover hesitates for a moment before explaining what his investigation uncovered. While the connection with the kingdom holds, Oren remains alone and contemplates the essence of this mystery. He cannot understand why the kingdom has not launched a search for the man with the position of Vice Knight Commander after his disappearance. The magical communication device picks up the words and Grover Hurston voices his assumption. Perhaps Osborne was abandoned during a secret mission that the kingdom did not want other countries to learn about. Oren stops at this and launches his own versions. There is another option: Osborne simply fled the country. Or, he reasons, the Vice Knight Commander got caught in a storm near Rose Island. Grover's voice cuts through all guesses with a sharp revelation. He confirms Osborne is indeed alive, and now he is on this island or has already adapted to local customs. As soon as he finishes reading the final report, he feels like he is jolted by electricity. He shudders and exclaims, not believing his own eyes. It turns out his guesses were only assumptions. Thoughts rush further. He correlates the news about Osborne with stormy shipwrecks involving a princess and the Vice Knight Commander. One question gnaws at him: could Osborne have been on that ship? Deciding that the investigation is not yet complete, he tells Grover that he will continue on his side and thanks him for the information provided. When the conversation ends, he remains alone and chuckles. The mystery that was really hidden in what happened stirred curiosity to the edge. Then he glances at the day's affairs and addresses Patricia, Claire, and Emo. He announces that they will go to Pagel Village officially to introduce Claire to the other residents. As they head to the village, Claire admits that she is a little nervous. Oren immediately reassures her. He is confident her bright personality will help her get along with everyone from the very first minute. A pack led by Oren and under the command of Emu approaches the entrance to the village. Buildings with thatched roofs are already coming into view ahead. As soon as Head and Claire reached the village, they were immediately noticed by two locals, a shirtless man and a woman in a dark top. The woman exclaimed in surprise, and the man immediately recognized Mr. Oren and his company. The man's gaze briefly shifted to the new arrival. He excitedly pointed, as if to say, "Another person has appeared." Nearby, the woman noted Claire's beauty, and another villager asked when she had arrived. Claire responded to the warm greetings. She introduced herself and immediately said that she was from the Astrata Kingdom, asking to be treated kindly. Oren, watching how everything unfolded, felt relieved. It seemed there really was nothing to worry about. When the initial moments were settled, he informed Claire that he would go to the village elder and that she could be relied upon. She agreed without any hesitation. Only a moment passed and Oren was already in the elder's dwelling. He greeted the elderly woman sitting on the floor and noted that they had not been there for long. She raised her gaze and asked what had brought him to her today. The matter was clearly stated. "I came to ask permission to build a pier in the dock area. I explained that if several ships could dock simultaneously, it would be much easier to deliver doctors and medical supplies from the mainland." The elder listened with a stern face, absorbing his proposal. After a moment, she replied that she understood. She would allow the construction of the pier, recognizing its benefit for the village, but warned it might be difficult to explain this to the other villagers. Oren was surprised by her immediate agreement. Then the leader revealed a personal reason. She confessed that once, due to her daughter's former situation, she had almost broken out in a cold sweat from fear and helplessness. Her face hardened with the memory as she firmly said she did not want others to experience the same, or for them to They agreed. Seeing her gratitude, the elder immediately embraced the idea. She said they needed workers and that she would contact the men in the village if they had free time. Filled with thanks, she bowed her head low. "Thank you." He asks Claire how she finds the village. She replies that everyone there is very kind and that their greeting touched her. Lifting a large pumpkin, she enthusiastically talks about the local vegetables, emphasizing their unique ecosystem compared to the mainland, and adds that she can't wait to start cooking with them. Catching her enthusiasm, he says he heard Claire is a skilled cook. Claire happily confirms and says she likes both cooking and eating. Nearby, a young islander emu silently watches their friendly conversation. While she watches them, a thought suddenly occurs to Emu. If you look now, Claire looks like a younger copy of the professor. Without thinking, she loudly blurts out this observation, shocking both Oren and Claire. Quick-witted but determined, Claire declares that she will still play the role of the professor's young wife. But because of this, Oren, when he is asked what exactly such a role means, Claire, blushing, suggests she can wake the professor up every morning. She insists she can do it even when Oren tells her she shouldn't bother him like that. She is twisted by the thought that Patricia looks more like his younger sister, and she categorically denies it. Far away in the Geodes kingdom in the Lezhny Nor Cathedral, a figure contemplates recent events. They believe that those two did well, but admit the reports from Blitz and Jacqueline were contradictory. Amazing, the figure is exposed. It is the priestess, Alice, who is meeting with one of her allies. The girl goggled says she recently told adventures about the current state of affairs in the kingdom. Alice confirms she did the same, spreading information among the people who come to the church. They both fall silent for a moment, a shared look, stern determination on their faces. Elise concludes, at least for now, that is all they have. Feeling that her companions are nearby, she extends her ear to them and says she will listen to any of their worries that they might. Her companion looks up and weighs the offer. She admits, maybe she is not very reliable, but it is better to talk about anything they can do because now they are trying to move against the kingdom. This is. Alone, the girl with glasses stood silently and her face was embarrassed. Across the table, Elise calmly sipped tea. Closing her eyes, she admitted the truth. "You are right." Murmured quietly while thoughts raced wildly. She was consumed by one single crazy question. What should I? I really wanted to help and solve Elise's problem, but a moment of hesitation held me back. The idea gave her a reason for the delay. If Eliza's problem was just as personal to the point that she couldn't confess her feelings to someone she admired, the emotional consequences would have been overwhelming. Her own thought escaped her involuntarily like a gas. Despite feeling that way about Professor Oren, she caught it on the fly. It should have hurt you that much. Eliza's eyes widened. Her own thoughts caught up with the shout from the girl who swallows words. This is Professor Oren. I knew it. She froze and this word echoed in her head. Disappointment or a sudden change of mood did not go unnoticed. What happened? Elise asked anxiously. The girl in glasses flinched and quickly began to cover her tracks. It's nothing. She quickly tried to steer the conversation back on track, agreed with Eliza that Professor Oren was unfairly expelled from the academy. She added that he would definitely be fine everywhere, but Eliza's gloomy, downcast gaze suggested, not quite. Seeing her friends still in despair, the girl with goggle glasses froze and clenched with determination. Her hand landed on the table. She was preparing to make a serious statement. I need to. She looked straight into the eyes and announced the news. I think I will leave this country. The statement hung in the air, leaving the rent. Stunned, her friend Eliza listens as the girl in glasses lays everything out clearly. She says she cannot pass on the magical tool she created. She has come to a fundamental disagreement with the country's methods. Quietly, Eliza asks if she has a destination. In her thoughts, a timid and noisy girl whom Eliza calls Wendell is bustling. She turns around and is about to leave from the summit. I'm going to the Estrada Kingdom, she announces the plan. Professor Oren is there now. I will contact Eliza as soon as I arrives. Eliza freezes for a moment without saying a word and processes the sudden escape. Seeing her friend's hesitation, Wendell asks what she intends to do next. What to do now? Wendell notices that Eliza is still hesitant, but instead gives her unwavering support, promises to wait for her forever. His words touch Eliza. Her determination only grows stronger. She confirms, understood everything, and now plans to meet both Jacqueline and Blitz to discuss their need. When Eliza's paths are already determined, a gentle smile lights up her face. She agrees. They say goodbye warmly, silently promising each other to see each other When night falls and the moon hangs in the sky, everything around becomes a silent witness to the birth of a deep awareness. Things change both for the country and for everyone who lives in it. On the southeastern shore of Roch Island, Oren, Claire, and Emu arrive at the site of a grand shipwreck. Claire looks at the disintegrating vessel, fear and admiration in her eyes. She is moved by what she sees, and she says that such a sight cannot be seen from the mainland. After that, he asks if they have already explored the interior. Claire explains, they handed over everything they could find so that it would serve as a clue to the ship's owner in the kingdom of Estrada, and Emu listens silently nearby. Emu adds that visiting the shipwreck as part of the island tour is the right choice. Seeing her excitement, he jokingly teases, Claire looks like she is really having fun. Then his attention shifts to Emu, and Oren asks with concern if she is okay. She smiles and assures everything is fine. His words clearly calm her as if he finally exhales. Relief is cut short by a sudden realization. Oren asks Claire if anything like this has ever happened to Emu on this ship. When Claire begins to explain that Emu was here long ago, Oren's eyes widen, and he solemnly shouts an order for Claire to retreat while he remains shocked and bewildered. From the swirling water, a huge pale tentacle bursts forth. It flies toward them with inhuman speed. Oren acts instantly. He pulls Claire back just at the moment when the appendage crashes down where she stood only seconds before. The sudden appearance of the colossal creature stuns the girls. Claire exclaims in shock. She cannot believe her own eyes and asks why the giant squid appears so suddenly in shallow water. Holding Claire protectively, Oren analyzes the situation. The giant squid should live in the abyss of the deep sea, and on its last visit it was not here. Behind them, Emu, broken by emotions, apologizes. Oren tells her not to worry and to wait there a moment. Oren's face hardens with determination. He calmly says he will handle this quickly. He steps forward, draws his sword, and raises a barrier between the creature and the two women. But something troubles him. He feels no hostility from the giant squid. Claire behind suddenly notices how it almost lunged at her, but the tentacles freeze at the last moment. He is tense like a string and shouts for Patricia and Emu to stay behind. Claire presses on him anxiously from behind, begging him to prepare his weapon. Oren hesitates. Despite everyone watching him, the giant creature still does not attack. Then a deafening splash. The giant squid's tentacles plunge into the water, and it sharply turns away from the shipwreck. It quickly retreats, disappearing under the waves toward the open sea. Only ripples remain. Watching it vanish, Claire turns to Oren and asks what that strange collision meant. She contemplates what she saw and concludes. The creature behaved too unnaturally for an ordinary monster, as if it appeared only to warn, stay away from the shipwreck. But despite the warning, Oren stubbornly decides they must move on anyway. He tells Claire to hurry and investigate the shipwreck. They don't know when the giant squid might attack again. Claire agrees, and they prepare to enter the vessel. Inside in the cabin, surprisingly well preserved, Claire looks around, mesmerized, but immediately reminds herself to be careful. The floor is slippery. Her scream cuts off as her boot loses grip on the slippery floorboards. She lets out a cry and begins to fall, and the orange one shouts her name and just then flies straight into the void. He reacts instantly. His hand grabs her waist to catch her. Holding firmly, he sees the surprised and embarrassed Claire raise her gaze. Still in his grip, the flushed young woman quickly assures him she is okay. Looking at her face, Oren immediately apologizes for the sudden closeness. Somewhere off-screen, Patricia Grayson suddenly clutches her stomach. The growing pain bursts out and her stomach growls loudly. Nearby, Claire Sandrid immediately shows concern. She asks if Patricia feels pain. Patricia clenches her fists and tries to compose herself. Meanwhile, at the shipwreck site, Oren suddenly freezes, sensing the presence of a third party. He sharply turns around, eyes wide with anxiety, wondering if they have been watched all this time. Noticing his sudden change in behavior, Claire asks if everything is all right. He forces a smile and brushes off her concern, saying it's nothing. But doubt spins in his mind. Maybe it's just his imagination. As he surveys the ruins, he decides for himself for now they need to be much more cautious. At night of the same day, the shining communication orb floods Oren's room with light. He turns around, shirtless and without ceremony approaches closer, and Grover Hurston's voice emerges from him, apologizing for the late contact. Oren replies that he was almost about to do the same and asks directly, what's going on? Now already seated and dressed, Oren listens to Grover's report. Near the border between the kingdom of Estrada and the neighboring country, a wyvern appeared. Oren immediately frowns. This is too troublesome, but Grover quickly clarifies, the wyvern is already defeated. Strange. Grover unfolds the story, saying that when the knights arrived at the place, the giant creature was already frozen solid in ice. After that, he voices his theory. They believe that a mage user with power equal to Jacqueline entered the straw. Oren considers the new information. He agrees that it could have been incredibly powerful, then throws out his own assumption maybe it is actually Jacqueline herself. Grover expresses doubt and reminds Oren, Jacqueline is known to be a complicated person. One thing confuses him, why would she bind a wyvern under her control in a place that has no connection to geodescent? Given her nature, she is probably just gathering more information. He asks Grover if there are any records that Estrada requested help from geodes and suggests Blitz might have submitted another application for this. He confirms this. Grover says that indeed there was no official request. Then Oren concludes that she acted on her own accord and reasons, if it was indeed Jacqueline, there is nothing to worry about. He abruptly changes the subject, dismisses previous thoughts and asks Grover through the communication orb if there are any records of appearances of a giant octopus monster near the eye. Grover's voice crackles and returns full of anxiety. He confirms that they really encountered it earlier and urgently asks if Oren is okay, wondering how such a monster, which he had never heard of, could appear at all. Directly Oren dismisses the concern and says it is not a problem. Explains that he felt something strange in the creature, suggests it might have been non-aggressive, but still asks Grover to gather any information he can about monsters. In the shining orb, Grover carefully weighs to investigate everything thoroughly or accept the course of events, then shifts his gaze to Jacqueline, who was quietly listening, and adds that this story warms him too. His gaze lingers on her as a thought flashes in his mind. If Jacqueline really is the one who defeated the wyvern, he reasons, then he will have to loudly praise her for how she moves and works with her legs. Meanwhile, in Estrada Kingdom, a cheerful young woman wearing glasses perched on her forehead recalls her own stunning appearance. She says, I had just decided that I had finally reached my goal when suddenly something incredibly audacious attacked me. The source of this brazen evil stands before Thema, gigantic wyvern, completely clad in icy, jagged spears. Jacqueline, with her back to the viewer, looks at her work and says that her titled one with 1,000 change sees not just a show. Then she turns to her companion, addresses her as Wendell, and asks if she didn't find strange what is happening. The confused Wendell asks for clarification. Jacqueline's question means the sudden appearance of a wyvern at this very moment. Exactly so, Jacqueline confirms, and her face suddenly becomes serious. She explains, even a creature of the wyvern level is quite intelligent, so it should not mindlessly attack people. This very inconsistency will become the key for the future. Wendell, however, seems less concerned with Wyvern's motives, dismissing his power with the words, he's just a wyvern of that level. She confidently names only those she considers capable of easily defeating such a creature alone, Professor Oren, Blitz, and Jacqueline herself, insisting she cannot recall anyone else. No one else. She lightly brushes off the creature, thinking that the wyvern is just a big lizard that spits fire, and it is hardly that difficult to defeat it. Her companion inside snorts disdainfully at this simplification. Despite her casual tone, she admits she felt that there was something strange about Wyvern too. His sudden attack on the city center was clearly unusual behavior. Then she puts forward a much darker version. The creature could have been controlled, and perhaps they were the target. Her companion glances askance. Her face becomes stern as she contemplates such a possibility. She thinks, if someone is truly capable of controlling such a gigantic creature as Wyvern at will, then it must be truly formidable magic. Jacqueline suggests continuing this line of reasoning with the Professor. Wendell agrees without hesitation and urges them on. Time does not wait, they must hurry to beat the moment and share their discovery. Therefore, the two of them walk along the city street, heading toward a new goal. On the island, Patricia notices how Oren's behavior suddenly changes and asks what is wrong with him. He replies only briefly, listen. Picking up his instruction, Warren smiles and says that the island is about to become much livelier. After that, he presses a large spotted juice close to himself. Her mysterious statement turns out to be a complete surprise for Patricia. Is completely confused and cannot gather her thoughts. Her confusion is shattered by the sight of two figures on the shore. She immediately recognizes them and calls out to Jacqueline and Wendell in amazement. Two newcomers stand on the beach. Jacqueline in a large witch's hat and a dark dress greets Patricia, quietly emphasizing that a lot of time has passed. Nearby, Wendell, wearing glasses pushed up on his head, nods as if he also sees. Patricia looks simply wonderful. A little later, Oren introduces them to Emu and Claire. He explains that Jacqueline and Wendell agreed to help with the Roch Island investigation, and for Emu and Claire, this is their first time. Claire officially welcomes the arrivals on the island and says she is pleased to work with them. She admits there could always be more help, but 2 additional people would overcrowd their current home, and this immediately creates a housing problem. While Claire speaks, Patricia looks as if she is about to interrupt. But she doesn't manage to finish speaking or even try because Oren throws out a grand decision before she can ask a question. He explains, as soon as the investigative team arrives, they will still have to take care of more living space and supplies, and then he suggests to create their own village. The idea is met with mixed reactions. Emu is thrilled at the prospect of many people coming to the island. Patricia quickly processes what she heard and understands that they will build their own settlement there. Meanwhile, Claire sees the logic: if everyone works together and takes care of the farm and household chores, each person can focus more effectively on the investigation. With a warm smile, Oren addresses his 2 newly arrived companions, apologizes for immediately putting them to work, and explains, it seems they will start building the village right away. He leads them to a huge, open space of land framed by trees. Oren proudly declares that he has found the perfect open spot for building the village, and one of the companions cannot hold back an excited wow. Jacqueline nods approvingly. A stream flows nearby. It turns out the place is really good. Nearby, Wendell, full of excitement, says it sounds fun and suggests pitching tents for the night right now. Way down by the water's edge, or something like that, Oren directs their gaze to where Emu and Claire are already resting by the cool stream. Before getting to work, the whole group pauses and admires the silence of this place. Hard work begins without delay. Jacqueline, Claire, and Oren act in concert, dragging heavy wooden beams and other building materials across the clearing. In the clearing, Wendell and Oren pull another large log, their faces fixed in determination as they keep up with the initial setup of the new base. After persistent work, a large sturdy tent is already standing ready, erected against the backdrop of the forest, as proof of their coordinated and effective teamwork. Oren and Jacqueline step back a step to inspect what has been done. He says that their skills have improved since their training days, and she agrees. Back then they did excellently. During that, Emu shouts a joyful cry. Rick, when evening falls, the company gathers together. It is clear that everyone is tired. Wendell states that she is completely exhausted, and Claire immediately adds, she is also very hungry. Oren praises everyone for the great work and announces that it is time to eat and prepare for tomorrow. Emu enthusiastically supports this. A generous lunch is spread before them. A large slice of roasted meat, a bowl of stew, and bread, a well-deserved reward for a hard day's work. As night falls over the newly arranged camp, Patricia, Wendell, and Emu sit by the fire and enjoy the warm food together, finally finding a moment of peace after a long journey. The conversation quickly shifts to what brought them here. Window recounts to Oren, the chase after him turned into hard labor. Everything was ruined by a sudden wyvern attack. Jacqueline adds her own dissatisfaction and asks why he fled the country without telling them anything. Oren apologizes and explains that he acted on impulse and did not think clearly at the time. Then he smiles and sincerely thanks them for taking care of him and following him all the way to this remote island. Jacqueline waved off his thanks and stated that she is also fed up with the methods used by geodes. After that, she said that Blitz and Elise will soon join them. But the mention of their other friends ruins everything or makes it impossible. He believes that if the Holy Knight and Sannies are allowed to leave the country, geodes will most likely use all its power to stop them. Jacqueline notes that her and Wendell's departure was less complicated, as neither of them has deep ties to the government. The voice reflects on the situation. Losing talented youth even like this, honestly, is not something to be proud of. Wendell admits she is not sure they will manage. Her doubt prompts Oren to voice his own concern. He directly asks aloud whether those two will really reach the island. But Jacqueline remains steadfast. She says, even with all the risks, Blitz and Elise are not the kind of people to do nothing just like that. Under the full moon, Oren lets her words pass through him like noise. Resettlement would be a real betrayal for them. And with this conclusion, he stands still. For now, they can only watch what is happening and wait to see how it all turns out. When the team settles for the night, the lonely island lies quietly in the boundless starry sea, a remote sanctuary holding an uncertain future. Within the strict walls of the geodetic kingdoms, in the meeting hall of the Night Order, an intense conference is taking place with the participation of the leadership. Suddenly, through this tense tension, a voice full of indignation breaks through, Blitz, and he declares that the situation is unacceptable. The Blitz outburst disrupts the calm reprimand from Captain Haig, who sits at the neighboring table. Haig warns him for raising his voice, as such behavior tarnishes the revered name of sanctity. Knights, the argument is heating up around the veteran who recently appeared near the border with Astradakin. His opinion should have been heard. He advised sending knights to subdue this creature, but the proposal was rejected. In response, Captain Haig calmly asks what opinion the bullets are trying to convey. He looks intently at his face as if casting an accusation. The real reason for this act is simple: to prepare a new knight formation for the upcoming invasion. Haig abruptly throws forward the construction scheme and demands an explanation of why all the students with 5 names written on it are at the forefront. Haig remains unmoved. In his own way, he questions, is Blitz just angry because the academic students joined the new formation, and insists that they were chosen only because they are the best in the city? So let's decisively refute this. The voice of Haig broke with anxiety. The students whose names start with Kyle Arnalord are clearly incapable of surviving in real combat. He continues to passionately deliver his speech, insisting that the students lack the very foundation of the knightly spirit. They do not feel the duty to defend the country and its people. He insists going onto the battlefield is too dangerous. At the sharp flash of his subordinates' glances, Captain Haig tightens like ice. With one cold command, he orders Blitz to be. He knows how to maintain tension between 2 knights, either quietly refusing or calmly justifying himself and walking away down the grand corridor. He overhears a warning addressed to Blitz. Open criticism of the country's policy could end in arrest. The voice adds that disagreement about war preparations due to the invasion had already been simmering that night. He continues down the corridor, but his thoughts cling to what he saw: other knights. He recognized their faces, doomed eyes that could only obey for the same reason, out of fear. The realization presses on him like a heavy stone. Covering his face, he thinks, under such circumstances, the country is doomed. Swallowing a pause in search of clarity, he decides to find Elise for someone. Everything started as simply as having tea, and in a moment, sitting by the cups, Elise listens to his story with wide-open eyes and almost cannot believe her own ears. She cannot believe that the once proud Night Order has fallen into such a state. Oren clarifies the bitter reality for her. He says that in the upcoming war, the chances that she will be drawn into battle as the Holy Maiden are extremely high, and that it would be more accurate to say, she would be made into you. He urgently asks her to leave the country as soon as possible for her own safety, and he himself declares that he intends to stay a little longer and try to convince the kingdom's leadership to abandon their foolish adventure. Oren lowers her eyelids. She involuntarily submits to his persistence. After a short pause, he brings his point to a close, and she opens her eyes with new determination. She acknowledges his plan and states that she will also think about what she can do to help. When the conversation comes to an end, Orange changes the subject and asks if Wendell said anything important when they last parted. Elise simply replies, "Let him be careful." Likewise, he stood next to Elise and she continued the interrogation. She asked if anything had happened between him and Jacqueline, and he just snapped, "No, nothing." Taking this into account, she switched to Wendell. Oren confirmed that they discussed the country's movements. Looking at her, he mentally noted, Elise's spirit of service is honorable. Blitz's knightly spirit is worthy of respect, yet there was an unspoken reserve in this. Oren's face became twilight-like, and his eyes clouded with thought. Elise felt his anxiety, looked at him with fearful eyes, and asked if Jacqueline and Wendell would have to endure hard times ahead. Nearby, as if on cue, the witch Jacqueline stood next to the hobbled engineer, and Wendell suddenly sneezed loudly. The event seemed to reach Oren as well. In surprise, he turned his head. The orange stretches under the morning sun right by his tent and mumbles about a wonderful day. Nearby, Claire Sandra greets him, saying she was so impatiently waiting for the plans for the day and woke up early. She suddenly remembers something and tells Professor Oren that she has a thing she wants to show him. From afar, he has no idea what it could be. While they walk, she puts a finger to her lip, stops him with silencier, asks if Hesh found anything during the night. Claire Sandra confirms, yes, something like that, calls it a great find. Her revelation becomes obvious. In one of the tents, Emu and Eliz are sleeping, wrapped in quiet embraces. Claire, turning outside, asks Oren if this isn't incredibly cute. He agrees, yes, truly charming. Claire smiles and says she will go wake Wendell and Jacqueline, and Oren adds, the other two need to be woken up too. Then his gaze slides toward the forest. He feels a strong magical presence. Barely understanding who it is, Oren smiles. It seems they are no longer asleep. In the clearing, Jacqueline suddenly shouts from tension and unleashes a powerful burst of magic from her staff. Nearby, Wendell sits on a stone and watches her training. She shudders at Oren's voice. He stands nearby and praises Jacqueline for sticking to morning training even after graduation, says it's truly commendable. He notes the impressive caliber of her wind magic and says that Jacqueline has honed her power even further. She explains this habit dating back to her student days, then teases Wendell, saying he also got fired up, even though he claimed he only came because of her insistence. And he quietly laughed to himself, noting the dynamic between him and his former students had not changed at all. The gaze shifts to Wendell, proudly displays a complex crystalline object. She exclaims, recognizing it as a device for detecting trap-type magic. Oren, intrigued, asks what kind of magical instrument it is. He listens attentively while she explains. A trap-type magic that creates puppet decoys or makes things invisible to deceive enemies is considered too complex to detect even for experienced magesand, yet he already looks impressed just by the hints. Wendell honestly admits the device is not yet perfect, but after a year of work it has finally taken shape and its accuracy is truly high. Hearing her report, Jacqueline says it sounds promising and Oren agrees. He is looking forward to its completion. He turns it over in his mind. Jacqueline trusts Wendell's skill, but he thinks that old, proud Jacqueline would never have honestly given credit to this Pierce. His thoughts are interrupted by a blushing Jacqueline. She demands to find out what he meant. With a gentle smile, Oren simply replies she has already grown up. When Jacqueline shouts for him to wait, Wendell steps forward and announces, it's time for everyone to wake up, breakfast is ready. After the meal, they are either ready or stand before the assembly and gesture towards the surrounding barren land. He announces, today they will start building a new village. He spreads out a detailed map with an approximate construction plan. A port town, a hut, houses, a bathhouse with a water wheel, a herb farm, and the already existing paddle village. Returning to Wendell, he confirms their first step is to build a large port. Then he asks to confirm that Glover is preparing everything needed to transport to the island. Wendell asserts. Before him are the dilapidated remains of the old port. Waves lap at the broken piers. He explains the idea to take the ruins of this found port town as the basis for their new one. Realization flashes in the eyes of Claire Sandert as soon as he hears the plan. Elise clarifies they need to prepare an environment suitable for the immersion of large ships. Doc, either agreeing with her assessment, enthusiastically picks up, let's head to the site right now. After some time, they reach the coastal ruins. Above the ground echoes a joyful voice solemnly proclaiming their arrival. While everyone is examining the area, the engineer in a hat and with a hammer, Wendell notes, the island is much larger than it seems from the outside. She aloud wonders whether the previous King Estrada planned to send a group here for investigation, or even intended to arrange a mass migration to this great mysterious port. Oran confirms, yes, just arrived. He had exactly the same thought. Then Jacqueline the witch intervenes and asks if the current king knows about the existence of port. Oran says he is not sure, but adds, the ruins themselves bear traces of an earlier attempt to do something. Meanwhile, Claire gives an update. She reports that Mr. Glover is now studying old records to understand the previous king's intentions. However, she emphasizes, so far nothing truly important has surfaced. Suddenly it surfaces. Hearing this, Jacqueline lets out a tired sigh and says it is so exhausting when rulers pull such suspiciously secret maneuvers. The conversation sharply shifts to Wendell and Oren. He says the situation is definitely unpleasant and confusing. She adds that she managed not to get directly involved in one story thanks to Blitz's actions. Her words make Oren ask if something happened to King Els of Jowd. Before Wendell can develop the thought, Jacqueline firmly interrupts. She advises, instead of worrying about the future, it is better for all of them to focus on the nearest matter in it. She stood next to Oren and noted that despite so many trials, he looks quite happy. He smiled and agreed, building the village will definitely protect them. Her comments seem to throw him off balance each time, so he turns back to her again, asking, aloud and with a hint of surprise, what are you doing? He was left with a barely noticeable, thoughtful smile. Several days passed in the newly built building or during an initiated call through a magical communication device. Glover has long since. He spoke and Glover's image trembled inside the glowing grail, issuing the usual report on the progress of laying the village foundations. Oren, holding the sphere, replied that his words are reassuring. Then Glover added, he also procured materials and gathered volunteers for the investigation. This news sparked interest in him. Leaning over the table, he asked how many people there were. Then Glover specified the number of volunteers, 3 from the Night Order and 2. He added that although the number was not large, it met his expectations and sincerely thanked that 5 volunteers were found at all. Grover's face became serious as soon as he processed these figures. Then he asked when the volunteers were supposed to arrive. Grover confirmed they must reach the island by the next afternoon. Relief slid across Oren's face faster than he thought. Extra hands will help a lot, but his gaze immediately sharpened when he noticed something wrong on Grover's armor. Grover's armor? He asked Grover about the condition of the armor. On the other end of the line, Grover's voice replied that it all came down to the training they had. That day he examined Grover's armor condition and wondered whether it was simply the work of an executioner knight or the result of training. The knight, appearing through a magical sphere, apologized for his embarrassed appearance and explained that he had no time for apologies. Is an apology a demand or not? To ask directly to find out if they want something from him. He unfolded his concern and noted that there had been no war in the Estrada region for a long time, so such harsh training seemed inappropriate. In response, Grover changed the subject. He asked if Oren was familiar with the country called. He named Dahartand, confirming his own information, mentioned that Dahart is located near Estrada. Grover clarified everything he was about to tell happened when. In the morning, he revealed critically important information. Dahart was attacked by a mysterious organization. The news visibly shocked Oren. Grover explained, although the attackers had numerical superiority, their lack of coordination allowed Dahart's forces to use the terrain to their advantage. During the retreat, Oren reviewed the report. The facts matched, but he sensed his own doubts in it. He found it hard to believe that such a great force was just a gang of cutthroats. He suspected it might have been a Night Order. Another nation? His thoughts continued to gallop. If it had been a Night Order, he would have been informed with equal precision in both directions in swordsmanship skills and tactical coordination, but it did not add up. The pieces did not fit into a single picture. It did not come together. Meanwhile, in another place, the witch Jacqueline was pondering, and it was exhausting for her when the rulers made such suspicions. Cruel moves. Returning to his desk, Oren suddenly gathered the scattered facts together and they formed a stunning possibility. His eyes widened as he voiced the bloody thought, could the jihadist king really? And it struck him right in the chest. When images of Blitz and Elise flashed through his mind, he looked at the bullet and addressed the knight, beginning to inquire about the 5 members of the Invite Squad for investigation. Oren's face froze, determination lay in every line. Learning what danger hung over his old comrades, he made a decision. He stubbornly looked at Grover and said directly, I need your service. In the jihadist kingdom, the story of the Holy Knight starts in the barracks of the Night Order. Inside, Blitz peers at the ranks of wounded and bandaged knights lying in their beds. The thought gnaws at him, what a miserable sight this is. While he surveys the grim consequences, Patricia Grayson approaches him and dryly sums up. The condition of the soldiers returning from the heart means a truly historic defeat, one that Jihadi will forever inscribe in the annals of military history. She explains that while the veteranites were dragging out another mess, they were ambushed and command made a catastrophic decision to send students with almost zero combat experience to the front line. Patricia continues her irritated breakdown, not holding back at all. They mindlessly attacked Dahart's mountain fortifications and were forced to retreat. Inside, she blames the academy staff, the same headmistress Arnoldord, for indulging favorites, and the leadership like Oren for misjudging the situation. And worst of all, she says Kyle got the position of unit commander through connections, so now the unit he assembled is made up exactly of these students. From the neighboring bed, one of the wounded knights groans, saying that if judged only by pure military strength, this would have been a war they should not have lost. And he concludes that this defeat probably angered his majesty. Patricia tries to get Blitz's attention, but he turns away and brushes off the whole story. He says this can't even be called a war, just a game of pretending. Then he moves down the corridor. Patricia shouts after him at the top of her lungs and demands to know where he is going. Blitz does not look back for a moment. He only announces the destination. He is heading to the Knight Commander. The scene cuts to Kyle Arnold. He stands motionless in armor, and an unnoticed observer only sighs with hope that after this incident he has indeed learned his lesson and will now do everything so that the Night Order can fulfill its proper role. Hey, now with a bandage on his right eye, he directly addresses Blitz and says, in the next battle he wants the Knight to lead the vanguard. Blitz, confused, asks why exactly so. This is an order, direct protection from Unit Commander Kyle. At the very thought of serving under such a man and continuing what Blitz perceives as a senseless war, disgust rises in him. He clenches his fist and decides to refuse. Just as he abruptly stands up to leave the post, a voice orders him to wait. He does not stop. He walks alone through the city streets, and despair overwhelms him like a wave. The geodesy he fought for seems to slip from his hands. Only one question remains: how and where should he go next? A voice cuts through his anxious thoughts while the rain pours. He looks back and sees Elise. She calls his name in surprise. She stands before him, soaked through from the rain, and asks why he went out in such weather at all. Elise explains that her appearance is not accidental. She was looking for him. In every word there is urgency, and she asks him to accompany her to the cathedral, adding that there is someone important he absolutely must meet. His face remains stern, but he agrees to her request without any hesitation. They make their way through rainy, slippery streets all the way to the huge spires of the city's main cathedral. In the spacious, echoing gate of the holy building they stop and peer deeper, right into the darkness itself. From there, a familiar voice calls out. A knight steps forward and addresses Blitz in a friendly manner. Blitz flinches in shock. She recognizes Grover in him. The knight immediately apologizes for the harshness of the meeting, then quickly shifts his gaze to the crystal in his hands. The object begins to pulse with bright white light. The tense silence is broken by the sudden appearance of a familiar face. Hey, Blitz, Elise, long time no see. Orrin Edwards speaks with a quiet smile. Blitz noticeably freezes, stumbling embarrassedly. Professor Orrin Edward. Lauren behind sees him alive, and Elise openly breathes out with relief, while Blitz admits he was worried both for her and for him. Orrin keeps his face much more serious when explaining his own concerns. He decided that it is really hard for you because of the current state of justice, especially Blitz, given his extremely strong sense of justice. His words echo in the heart of the young knight. He can only silently watch and quietly ponder. In a moment, Orrin continues and throws a terrible accusation. He says that he believed the recent devastating heart attack could have been arranged by the geodes themselves. He admits that Blitz and Elise are strong, yet adds, at night there is nothing more painful than when their country departs from its own beliefs. Blitz grimly nods, confirming the truth in the professor's words. After the disappointment was finally confirmed, Orrin clearly formulates his goal. He wants them to help him defend justice and inspire positive changes in the GEDF. Hearing this, Elise grabs the shining crystal and asks about his plan, whether he intends to simply leave the country just like their former comrades Wendell and Jacqueline. Franklin did, she explains. Thanks to her efforts and diligence, many citizens have already begun to relocate. Blitz picks up and asks if the professor is telling them to renounce their name. But he sidesteps the question and again directs his sharp gaze at Blitz. Asks whether, despite the evacuation of civilians, the leadership still has not abandoned plans for the next surprise. He confirms whether in suspicion he utters a simple, submissive yes, standing by the window, or throws remarks that the military leadership is ridiculously failing because they are completely blind to who they really should be. While Orrin speaks, Elise's voice picks up the conversation. She explains that in the country Estrada they have already prepared to meet both her and Orrin, and that she decided to leave Gyades immediately as soon as she learned one truth. Hearing her determination, Orrin turns to Blitz and extends an invitation to spend the night on the island together with him, Wendell, and Jacqueline. Not the worst idea. Blitz, full of doubts, replies only, if that is what you want. You mean this hesitation and then a quiet, restrained confirmation, as if he shows that he understands. His quiet understanding pushes Blitz forward. The knight's expression changes to determination, and he says that first he must settle a few things. He asks Orrin for a little more time and promises to join already at. Later he clarifies his intentions, swearing to fulfill the last duty as a holy knight or in simple agree. Alright, this decision evokes a memory of recent official hearings. In a huge hall, Holy Knight Blitz stands before his superiors even before the king. Commander Haig asks if he understands why he was summoned, then voices the accusation. 3 days ago, Blitz broke the rules, disobeyed the commander's orders, and openly criticized their actions in the presence of many knights. Blitz confirms the accusation. His admission stirs a commotion among the knights. They whisper that he has probably lost his mind. Haig growls, demanding silence. As soon as the rune quiets down, he presses Blitz and asks if he is really ready to bear the proper punishment for his own disobedience. In Oren, this still echoes Blitz's actions were ruthlessly inhuman. At the commander's request, Blitz voices his response. He says he is ready, and because of that incident, he will renounce the Knight Order effective from that very day. His statement of renunciation provokes anger in Commander Haig. He shouts how the Holy Knight could betray the people's expectations. The memory blurs, and in the present Oren tells Blitz that he seems completely blind to the true state of the people. Embarrassed, Blitz can only repeat again the phrase about the people's expectations. While he continues speaking before the stunned officials, Oren reveals, the people are already taking everything into their own hands, and many citizens are thinking about moving to other countries. One of the men in the hall sharply jerks forward and hisses about despot. Distrust, he looks at them with cold disappointment and calls their stubborn blindness complete nonsense. He accuses them of closing their eyes to the truth, an act that now threatens everything. His words stir a slight commotion among the spectators' attention involuntarily sticks to the silent figure of Blitz. They whisper among themselves, ask if what the knight said is true, and wonder what is really hidden behind his act. Ignoring the whispers, Blitz turns away from the assembly and walks away. He walks further down the majestic, empty corridor and in his mind replays his own oath to become strong and protect the people. He already understands, if he stays with the knights, this oath will never be fulfilled. His thoughts are cut off by Kyle Arnoldord, who blocks the way. Kyle says with disgust that Blitz is just like his teacher. He gets annoyed when people act on their own. Blitz sharply dismisses him. He says it is his own decision and there is no need to explain to Kyle where he is going. Spitting in annoyance, he tries to leave. Cal calls him to wait. Ahead, Blitz sees that armored knights have blocked his path in a solid formation. Cal mocks asks if even a holy knight can break through such numbers of forces. Nevany. With a club-like weapon in hand, Cal asks what exactly Blitz intends to find out if he plans to fight them with the weapon he carries. The confrontation is tied. Blitz, the lone figure in a cloak, stands firm before Kyle, while an entire squad of knights is set to block his exit, holding him from all four sides. Inside the nighttime headquarters, Oren stands facing the ranks of armored soldiers. Their spears loom over him, pointed directly at him in a single formation, pressing with their threat. The confrontation ends instantly. Oren calmly steps back and the entire squad of knights lies fallen behind him. Kyle Arnoldord, disarmed and on the floor, looks up with disbelief, unable to comprehend what just happened. He only utters a babble, "This is impossible." He glanced back at the stunned unit commander, the face nothing readable, calmly says that what Kyle just saw is the true power. Holy Knighthand, she leaves the stage of one-sided battle behind or orders to rent somewhere outside. She notices how much luggage they have. He acknowledges it and thoughtfully says that women seem to need a lot of things for long journeys, a fact that It should be noted, she confirms that everything is going according to their plan. All the luggage was loaded into the carriage, or just thanks for the update, his preparation is complete. Oren barely smiles and announces that it is time to depart. They begin to depart. Standing before a luxurious carriage drawn by 2 horses, they prepare to set off on the road. Their destination is the kingdom of Estrada. In the second half of the same day, Oren spoke with Blitz. On the horizon, a gigantic ship appeared. From the shore, Emu and Patricia closely watched its approach. Patricia marveled at its incredible size, and Emu noted that rebuilding the village would indeed require mountains of materials and people. Someone remarked, the ship from the research team has already arrived. A large, well-equipped ship year after year cut through the waves and steadily approached the island's shore. As soon as it docked, Oren, together with Jacqueline, Elise, and Patricia, stood on the beak ready to greet the arrivals. A man with impeccably combed hair stepped forward and introduced himself, Bamford, a merchant from Estrada. He responsibly reported that he was entrusted with procuring the necessary supplies and warmly added, from now on they can ask him for any materials they need. The one who followed him, a man in an apron, introduced himself as Turner. He explained that he oversees the construction of the house on the island and brought here a team of skilled craftsmen from the mainland. Emu froze in amazement, looking at the multitude of people who had come. Nearby, Oren just smiled and solemnly greeted them, assuring that his team eagerly awaited working together with everyone. In response, Bamford addressed Oren, suggesting they quickly unload the materials, and only then did he plan to introduce the volunteers who would join the investigative team. The volunteers gathered were diverse. A cheerful young woman with cat ears introduced herself as Linda Cat Beast Folk, next a somewhat shy young man in armor named Bari. And finally, a confident knight with contrasting two-tone hair announced, "He is Kirk from Estrada Kingdom Knight Order." After that, several more introductions were made. A young man named Donald explained that he was a merchant and connected to the trading company Mr. Bamford. Next to him, a woman in glasses holding a staff introduced herself as Lucia Mage Craftsman, specifying that she specialized in earth elemental magic, so she was sure her help would be needed. Her professional restraint suddenly cracked as soon as she glanced past Donald and caught her with wide, admiring eyes. She stumbled over her words, said it was an honor, and confessed she had long and passionately admired Lady Jacqueline. Lucia blushes embarrassedly and begs Professor Jacqueline to stop teasing her. Nearby, Patricia watches the exchange and notes to herself, even the stern Jacqueline now looks confused. Suddenly, the moment is cut by Turner's voice, the construction manager. He clears his throat and declares that there is no point in idling. After that, he orders an inspection of the planned site, and at that moment, Merchant Bamford freezes and looks stunned. He finally realizes that before him is Oren Edwards, the famous sage of geodes. Oren leads to the endless, cleared plot of land. Scanning the space with his gaze, he quietly acknowledges the power this area holds. Turner stands nearby and confirms with relief, with such an amount of space, they will be able to build everything according to plan. Wonderful, he looks around and suggests starting with the construction of barracks for the research team, where many people will gather. Together, they quickly find support for the plan. Patricia says the construction must proceed without disruptions. Bamford offers to use his things, and Lucy and Jacqueline volunteer to help activating magical abilities. Oren thanks them and notes their proposals are simply wonderful. When the initial construction plans are finally agreed upon, Oren's attention shifts further. He confirms that they will conduct long-range reconnaissance and adds candidate locations for new bases must be inspected one by one. Oren reveals the strategy. He decides to expand the network of bases in parallel with construction in the village. Linda does not hide her excitement about the prospect of the research team, and Oren explains that the danger is unknown, so the team must consist of fighters capable of combat. After this, he officially convenes the group and announces, Patricia, Emu, Kirk, Bari, and Linda will form a 5-person expedition team. The announcement immediately has an effect on the new knights. Kirk admits he is nervous, and Bari asks him not to be so tense, then steps aside, watching them. He says this will be the first real exploration of Roch Island for the 3 newcomers. Bari catches himself thinking and reflects on the youthful energy of the team. Yes, he knew they were young, but their reactions are truly refreshing. The moment breaks when Linda teases Bari for being just as nervous, and he replies in a defensive tone, telling her to mind her own business. He addresses the newly formed expedition team, his voice sharp and clear. Yes, let's stay focused. After these words, a friendly chorus of agreement. With determination ready, the 5 from the team enter the dense forest on Roch Island. One immediately remarks, the surroundings here are incredibly rich in nature. As they move further, comments are directed at Kirk. The island feels much larger than it seemed from the outside. Then Kirk picks up and retells Oren's warning. Monsters grow stronger the deeper they go inland. Patricia listens and adds, although the coast was quiet, they must not relax. This topic was buried so as not to ask what to do if they encounter such powerful beings. Or they respond solemnly and with a confident smile, supposedly then they will just scatter. Among them, his effortless confidence confuses Kirk and Linda. They only echo his words, do not believing doubt that everything can be so simple. A simple idea to place faith in your leader. The group presses forward deeper into the tropical green heart of the island. Thick thickets suddenly part, revealing before them a boundless, unexpected clearing. Beyond it stretches a swamp flooding the view. One of the team members cannot hide his surprise, had no idea such a place existed here at all. They stand at the edge of the swamp, and Kirk and Linda feel the air changing. Kirk says there is a tense presence here, something he has never felt before. Suddenly the ground beneath Oren's feet collapses. Patricia and Kurt scream in fright as he begins to sink. Without missing a beat, Oren looks down and calmly recognizes the danger. It seems to be a fast. The sand pulls him back and he cannot free himself from the trap. While Patricia panics and does not know what to do next, Kirk sharply intervenes with a hoarse command, "Do not move," and Oren releases a burst of power. The ground around instantly chills. The soil hardens quickly as if frozen in ice. With relief, Barry thanks Professor Oren for his quick thinking. Oren explains he froze the soil so they can simply break the fragile surroundings and pull him out. When Oren finally gets free, Kirk addresses the confused group and reminds them, no matter what situation they find themselves in, they must not panic. He orders them to gather together so they can continue the investigation. When they gather again, Linda's gaze slips into the distancing. Curiosity awakens within her. She noticed the weather tent. Patricia approaches and examines it, noting that the material differs from the tents used in Pagilville. Settlement. Bari immediately recognizes the texture fur from Gino, an animal from the south, hunting of which was banned 15 years ago, so he concludes, the tent must be at least old. Bari approaches the dilapidated tent and voices aloud a doubt. Will there be any more things that will give clues? He thinks that this find may be connected with Osborne. Rydia was born. Inside him, his gaze falls on a sword lying on the ground. A faint smile touches his lips as he confirms to himself. He knew it would be so. Be here. If you look closely at the swords, an inscription is visible on the crossguard identification. Patricia asked what number it was. Linda explained that it is a unique identifier assigned to each knight so they can determine the owner of the sword and find out why it ended up on. When Oren freezes, staring at the drawn sword with wide eyes of shock, his companion Kirk notices. This means something. Suddenly, the ground explodes. From the depths bursts a colossal pale serpent-like snake with jaws resembling pincers, tearing it from the inside. The creature looms over them like a tower. Kirk is shocked and screams at the unexpected size, and Bari panics, asking Oren why he is so calm. As if nothing, Oren measures the length, 20 meters, and reassures everyone that there is no need to panic. Before anyone can move, a dark-skinned young woman with long light hair jumps into the air and, as if in an instant, lunges straight forward. With a sharp, powerful downward strike, she drives the sword deep into the serpent's body. The impact force is such that Viceroy FSHHHHHH. The warrior lands, turns to the group, and proudly announces the success of Oren, whom he calls Professor. Oren confirms the training was not in vain. Patricia exclaims that it was wonderful, and Kirk freezes in amazement, having just witnessed a real F. Inspired, Kirk asks if others can become stronger too if they train under the craftsman leader. The victorious warrior Emu shines and assures, yes, absolutely, I promise Patricia with enthusiasm. He listens to their impatient chatter or, conversely, tired submission. He thinks to himself, it seems he has gained more students. Next to the night camp, Estrada Kingdom. Night Order 1 traveler complains of fatigue after a long walk from the island. Another voice encourages the exhausted one, Wendell, and advises to gather more spirit. Thus the group enters the moment of reunion. Inside Oren, his companions gathered together. The talking girl who swallows words notes, 3 new Astrodonites, Bari, Kirk, and one more, look disappointed because they have not been able to train since their arrival. She brushes off their disappointment as if it were inevitable and explains, the group's real goal when they came to the inn was to deliver to Grover a specific item, a simple sword hilt, undecorated. She hands the hilt to the knight Gersten Grover, asking him to use the identification number to find the owner. He understands the request and immediately agrees to start the investigation. From the place, Oren gives consent and calmly says to the knight, please continue to carry out the task. As soon as he receives the order, the girl who swallows words notices. Grover's face suddenly pales and she asks if he is all right. Jacqueline interrupts and explains, they received information about an unknown group spotted near the Estrada border. The girl in glasses instantly goes into shock, seeing a parallel with how Jaides attacked Ahart. Jacqueline confirms, the place is indeed alarming, especially since it happened so soon after the Blitz and Eliza's escape from under Jaides. Then Grover clarifies the official position. The night order from Geodes is very likely but not guaranteed. Estrada sent knights to check the rumor about the vision, but they found nothing, so the kingdom ultimately dismissed this information as false. Jacqueline concludes that Geodes will logically try to draw out important figures like Blitz even before they officially enter Estrada. And the stray pigeon adds something even more alarming. What if Geodes already knows exactly where their group is in Estrada? His hand slams on the table with a bang and all assumptions scatter instantly. He turns directly to Grover and rejects. They cannot just sit and wait. He commands his great winged mount to lead them to the observation point. The beast soars over the barren, hilly landscape, carrying them all the way to the very border. As soon as they land, complete silence falls here. Jacqueline quietly notes that there is absolutely nothing there, not even a hint of a suspicious group, let alone anyone. And in this silence, he just calmly looks around, gazing into the too smooth scene. While the group marches and examines the terrain, he notices the virgin meadows are not trampled. There are no signs of a large number of people, so they were either pushed back or hidden where they cannot be seen. Grover Gersten turns to him and says that according to their map, the Deal River border is just ahead. After that, he asks Professor Oren about their next plan of action. He concludes that the lack of changes will not affect the outcome and suggests they return. At that moment, a powerful magical impulse flares between him and Jacqueline, and it throws both of them off balance. Oren instantly recognizes the sensation and says he felt an incredibly powerful magic for a moment. Jacqueline confirms they just felt a colossal amount of power. Confused, Grover asks what happened. Jacqueline's face becomes serious. She states that the power is definitely in Elise. Her logic is simple. If Elise is using her specialty, healing magic, it means she has been driven into a hopeless situation. At that moment, Wendell rushes forward and Grover restrains him. Wendell suddenly bursts into hysteria, shouting that Elise must be saved. Grover holds her in place and sharply warns they are almost at the border, and if they cause trouble in another territory, it will result in an international incident. Wendell exhales sharply, thanks him for cooling his head, and then anxiety presses again. He asks Oren what they should do next. His face freezes in firm determination. Oren addresses the group and sets a new goal. They will find Elise and Blitz. As soon as the mission is changed, the winged creature rises into the sky again, flies over the dense forest, and carries them to their friends. He and his companions take off, looking down at the endless water surface. Wendell leans over the edge of the winged structure and examines the incredible width of the river, and Jacqueline confirms, this is the Deal River, the international border. He watches the current for a long time and suddenly realizes the riverbed leads straight to Geodes. And at that moment, a thought strikes him: the people they were hunting planned to cross this very river to enter the Estrada kingdom. His eyes suddenly widen. He recognized them. He hovered over the very edge of the huge creature, holding on very unsteadily. He clenched his palms into a boat through his mouth and shouted down, "Right here." Above the river surface, right here, below, a small boat was carrying a group of people, among whom were Lise and Blitz. They all sharply raised their heads and froze in astonishment when a huge winged creature descended from the clouds. Patricia Grayson, among the refugees, was frozen in shocked stupor and could not believe her eyes. She recognized not only Professor Oren, but also Wendell, Jacqueline, and even Grover. Reception. Looking around at the familiar surroundings, Jacqueline released a great wave of relief. They were all alive. Wendell added that they were worried about them, but Oren remained focused, his gaze sharp. He absorbed the whole picture. He noted, the matter was not only about Blitz and Lise, they were accompanied by more than 10 other people who had escaped from Geodes with them. Blitz's attention immediately fixed on the danger. He stood unwavering on the bow of the boat, deflecting magical attacks with a radiant hexagonal barrier film, then shouted to Elise, "This is an emergency, the reunion can be celebrated later." Somewhere behind, the pursuing ship only confirmed his fears. Geodes soldiers were approaching them by boats. He replayed what he had seen in his mind. A slight frown appeared between his brows. It seemed strange. Against opponents of such caliber, he knew one blitz should have been enough to put them under pressure. Pressing them, he quickly glanced at Lise, and it immediately became clear why they were holding back. She was holding a baby wrapped in blankets as tightly as possible. He understood this at first glance. They were avoiding a brutal, uncompromising fight so as not to let the child end up at home. With a new understanding of their desperate situation, Oren went down and shouted with firm determination, "Blitz," from the boat below. The knight looked up, and exhaustion and hope mixed on his face, and he shouted back, "Yes." Oren gave him a confident smile. "You did well," he assured him, "the rest is on me." Relief washed over in a wave. Blitz could only whisper, "Professor." While the poignant reunion was taking place, Jacqueline took the helm and called the refugees, "Everyone to me, to the familiar place. Faster here." Just as they set off to evacuate the refugees, the pursuing jihadist soldiers from their ship shouted, demanding to stop. Patricia, standing next to Oren, voiced her concern. Any response could ignite a conflict at the border. Oren remained indifferent, simply told her not to act. Anxiety. Then he stretched out his hand and slid his fingers over the surface of the river. He noticed the waves rising and vaguely said that a minor adventure would happen very soon while Elise and Blitz watched from there, nearby from. Close by, his words left Blitz completely confused. The young knight murmured the title Oren and still did not fully understand what he was saying. And before them, the river suddenly roared and clattered wildly, spreading into a huge, unnatural mass. At Oren's gesture, a colossal wave surged forward, with furious force crashing directly onto the boat of one jihadist and washing it away. Having completely neutralized the immediate threat, Oren stood on the deck of their transport next to Elise and Jacqueline. Drops of water still clung to his hair, but he had already returned to the rescued group and announced the next point, returning to Roch Island. The knight from the opposing forces shudders from a painful groan. He is oppressed and overwhelmed by the very presence of what lies ahead. He recognizes this incredible weight, the legendary power of Sage or Edwards. Under the pressure of this force, Blitz stands surrounded by allies, Jacqueline, Wendell, and Elise. He sternly warns those pursuing them, if they harm people even once more, they should be ready for the consequences. The commander of the opposing forces clicked his tongue in frustration under his helmet. With an expression of deep reluctance, he barked an order to retreat. After that, their ship turns and sails away from the shore. It was clear. They want to avoid unnecessary fighting on another country's territory as much as possible. When the threat disappeared, Warren switched to the United Allies and refugees asking if everyone was okay. They replied that there were no problems. He smiles as if truly relieved and deflects compliments, saying it was thanks to them because they held on until he arrived. Barely having expressed joy that everything finally settled, Blitz approaches him sincerely and profusely thanking Professor Oren and admitting he cannot imagine how it would have ended without his intervention. Blitz then returns to his other companions and expresses gratitude to Elise, Jacqueline, and Wendell for their decisive support. Jacqueline closes her eyes and barely smiles, implying that she can be relied upon any time. Wendell picks up, asking if everything is all right because they are friends. Of course they will help. Jacqueline nods, exactly. Later, Oren discusses the plan with Grover Hurston. He reports that the refugees will be taken under protection at the monastery near the capital. Oren exhales with relief. If they end up there, even geodes will not be able to reach them. Blitz and Grover officially formalize their cooperation. Blitz says he will be under Grover's care, and Grover agrees he is counting on Blitz. Looking at Oren's condition, Grover notes that he is probably exhausted and looks terrible. He promises to arrange an audience with His Majesty so Oren can rest in the capital at least until arrangements are made. He accepts their gratitude. Patricia thanks him wholeheartedly for the help, or he interrupts and says that before leaving for Roch Island they need to explain the situation to His Majesty. Noting how long the journey took, Jacqueline urges everyone quickly. While their urgent preparations continue, several days pass. The team, now consisting of Holy Knight Blitz and Holy Maiden Elise, stands before the throne in the Grand Hall of the Estrada Royal Palace. They officially thank King Estrada for granting them an audience. The king sits on the throne, acknowledges their presence, and says he has already heard everything from the senior knight Grover and understands that their recent decision was probably unbearable. Next he explains Estrada cannot ignore the recent movements of Jihadist Kingdom, and indeed, they have just caught a spy. This news suddenly hits Oren and he immediately questions the king's words. The king allows the senior knight to elaborate the explanation. James says the spy was a high-ranking person in their own government, yet it remains unclear. Was he pushed by the Geodists or did he act solely for his own benefit? Patricia and Oren freeze from the revelation. They find it hard to believe. The king just snorts and adds, the real shock is yet to come. The spy led the Geodos army and covered the border attack with false information. After this, the king conveys the most critical part of the intelligence. The states of Dijihad and Rizin have officially formed a military alliance. The news sends shockwaves through the entire group. Oren freezes, speechless. Wendell recalls the reason: it is the same country where the princess disappeared. Eliz admits she has a bad feeling about this turn, and Jacqueline asks why Geodes suddenly allied with Nam. The king confirms all this information was extracted during the interrogation of the captured spy. With a grave expression, he announces that the situation is too serious, and nearby is Oren's face, concealed by concern, tensely pondering what this new agreement will mean for the world. The king's face remains stern as he prepares to continue and begins addressing the assembly with the word now. Then he sits on his throne and addresses Blitz and Elise directly, asks what they desire and for what purpose they have come. Blitz, answering without hesitation, declares their only desire is to spend time with the mentor and friends, and also to join the investigation of Roshal. While they stand next to Oren, their unity is noticeable, so the king orders them to raise their heads. He looks into the gathered faces and smiles, saying that their expression is wonderful. Noticing their determination, he officially addresses them Holy Knight Blitz and Holy Maiden Elise, and having fulfilled the request, entrusts them to jointly unravel the mysteries of Roch Island with Thorin. Under the official permit, Blitz and Elise look up brightly and decisively and shout that they have been accepted. Their mission is defined. The group sets off to the destination, a solitary island covered with forest rising from the sea. As soon as they landed on the shore, Elise looks out from the beach where the boats were pulled ashore and makes sure this is really Roch. Or, holding her close, he declares, this place is known as the island that calls to trouble, and it has a distinctly unusual atmosphere. He notices that she seems to feel it the same way. He adds that he cannot shake the feeling. The island hides a great secret, but before he can unfold the thought, a joyful voice thunders, "Welcome." They turn toward the sound and see Patricia and a young islander Emu. Patricia exhales with relief. The professor and everyone are safe, and Emu happily greets the arrival of even more people. Towards her an official greeting from Blitz. He says he looks forward to working together. Next to them, another young woman full of energy introduces herself. While Emu energetically urges them forward or subtly notes her lively nature, Patricia, on the contrary, intervenes and decides, enough with greetings, it's time to show them the villain. The village. Then she gestures toward a large, impressive estate, newly built, and announces that it is both their home and a new home for those who have just arrived. He is delighted with the magnificent estate and the village itself. Elise, meanwhile, is simply happy that now everyone will live together. Patricia explains, while her group was exploring the island, the craftsmen were already advancing construction. Smiling, she invites them to look at the farm. After arriving at the farm, they are greeted by a lively scene. Several people are working tirelessly. A young woman with cat ears, Linda, looks up in surprise and immediately recognizes Holy Knight Blitz and Holy Maiden Release. She exclaims that with their arrival, finally the entire golden generation has gathered on the island. At night nearby, Kirk asks his companion Bari if the work is going well. Bari, clearly frightened, confirms, yes. Then Kirk says that is perfect and asks for a report on the status of F. He lifts a box with plants and reports that they were sent seedlings from the capital and that they plan to plant them in the app. Then Kirk shifts the conversation to the ranch. Linda enthusiastically says that with the professor and the golden generation at their disposal, they couldn't even dream of it, and then impatiently offers her help. Likewise, he further outlines plans for the ranch. They will build a stable together with Mr. Turner, while Mr. Donald is currently negotiating for Mr. Turner's life. Listening to the report, Kirk suggests to Oren, probably they will keep chickens and goats. He reasons that their smaller size is more practical for sea transport. He tells Elise that if they keep chickens, they can collect eggs, and this is a great benefit for their settlement. Elise agrees, noting that everyone is so enthusiastic. While the conversation continues, Patricia chimes in. She tells Oren and Blitz that she is glad their energy is contagious. Blitz agrees, adding that he himself feels energized. Likewise, Patricia continues and says that she also saw herds of animals. Nearby, Lucia shares good news. Yesterday she came across a place full of fruits and wild greens. Oren raises his hand, hesitates for a moment. He announces this as wonderful news or lays out a plan. For now, they will gradually figure out the situation in the immediate surroundings, and then, starting tomorrow, everyone will go out to gather wild products, hunt, and begin to explore new territories. Ernest, his plans are interrupted as soon as he notices Ima silently standing nearby with anxiety on her face. Now he is already indoors and has changed his cloak, so he turns to her. "What's wrong?" She addresses him Professor. Her face is stern. She gives a sharp warning. In 2 days a storm is approaching the island. The news confuses him and he can only repeat her words and not believe it. The rainstorm lashes the island like a whip. Inside, Patricia Grayson watches the incredible downpour through the window while Oren stands nearby. He says that reporting everything to Estrada is the right decision. Anyone caught at sea in such weather will surely perish. Then he shifts his gaze to Ima, who stands nearby. He admits her abilities are real, especially this eerie talent to unfailingly predict exactly such a storm. Events flash through his mind in 2 lines. Ima explained that although she cannot formulate it well, the sky feels heavy as it does before a storm. Their conversation was interrupted by a man from Paddle Village. He urgently sought out Mr. Seruji because he needed to talk to him. After that, Oren approached the muscular man with two-toned hair, apologized for the interruption, and immediately made it clear that he had to report something vital. Relying on those memories, Oren gives the man a terrible warning. The storm will hit the island the day after tomorrow. He urges immediate action and countermeasures. His words were met with serious, focused ices if the interlocutor was already thinking about how to endure it. Oren returns the story to the present and explains to the others exactly how he learned about the coming storm. He reveals that Imu told him the same thing, thus confirming her prediction. The two-colored-haired man adds, in Paddle Village some people can sense weather changes. He suggests that Imu has awakened that variability within herself, and Oren silently contemplates this. With excitement he states, even the most progressive magic cannot predict the weather. Nearby, Imu shines with joy and exclaims that she feels good because she has become like everyone else in the village. But despite her happiness, practical concern weighs heavily on Oren's mind like a stone. If Imu's and others' words are true, they cannot relax at all. He wonders how enormous this storm will grow. Imu honestly admits she does not understand much of all this. Meanwhile, the man with two-colored hair clasps his hands on his chest and grimly concludes, he cannot be sure, but the storms that cover this island are always furious. Catching these notes, Oren looks at Imu resolutely and stubbornly. He tells her that from now on they will face continuous work without any rest. Imu responds only with a look, ready to accept this challenge. Oren looked at the island warrior. Sweat and distrust were frozen on his face. The warrior asked if Oren really believed in his warning. Oren met him with a gentle, unyielding smile. Yesend explained that after seeing the expressions on both his own face and Imu's, he could not believe they were lying. His gaze froze in determination, and he clearly ordered, preparations for the storm must begin immediately. As soon as Oren gave the command, he was quickly noticed near Imu and another villager. They were pulling wooden boards, reinforcing the structures before the storm that was already approaching on the horizon. While the others did not waste time either, Elise and Patricia stood aside and carefully watched how Wendell and her accomplice diligently organized the equipment. At the same time, Oren was indeed consulting with Jacqueline and Blitz, waving his hand and giving brief instructions to coordinate every move. Having paused, he turned to Imu. She was frozen by the window while the wind was gaining strength, and asked what people from Paddle Village usually do to survive such a storm. Imu explained that they essentially stay in their houses, which are quite sturdy. The island warrior added, they have lived on this land so long that they already have well-prepared countermeasures. Imu clarified, as soon as the rain and wind become truly fierce, they evacuate to the nearest cave. That is, as soon as Lad heard this, he immediately understood. They have a well-thought-out survival plan. Patricia, hearing the explanation, shuddered. She said that for those who grew up in the geodes, such a storm would seem like the end of the world. Imu calmly replied that she does not think the villagers will be scared and panic. Despite the reassurance, Patricia still voiced her concern for the people of Paddle Village. Nearby, Wendell noted, if such storms become regular, they will have to beware of other natural disasters as well. Elise nodded sadly and added that it seems this is only the beginning. Starting from her concern, he felt her anxiety, then turned to Patricia and told her not to worry. He revealed, Jacqueline had already cast reinforcement magic on the estate, so he assured her there is no need to worry about their safety. In the reinforced estate, Lucia expresses admiration for Jacqueline's magic, precise and beautiful. Patricia nearby warmly supports, with her abilities, nothing threatens them. During their quarrel, he listens or involuntarily replays every line in his head. He feels calm knowing there are more magical specialists nearby, and he notes, as it turned out, Jacqueline has recently been teaching magic to both Patricia and Lucille, which really helps. Wendell supports him with words. She smiles and says she never expected Jacqueline to become so caring. Elise adds that it seems Jacqueline has gotten two younger sisters. From the neighboring sofa, Jacqueline sharply replies. She hears Wendell teasing her. Meanwhile, somewhere else, sheltered from the storm, Imu lies collapsed in despair. She sighs heavily and prays for the rain to finally end. She cannot understand how to return to her normal state faster. While she mourns, Oren stands inside the estate. His preparations are complete. He admits they did everything possible and can only hope the storm passes without incidents. I use this for someone like Imu. This stifling weather is a kind of natural inner courtyard. He shifts his gaze to the window and watches as the furious rain relentlessly beats against the glass. The next morning, the storm had completely subsided. Under a clear, radiant sky, Emu throws her hands up and exclaims festively that everything has cleared up. Nearby, Patricia wonders, as if yesterday's bad weather caused a real squall and then melted away. While the younger members of the group celebrate, Oren remains firmer and more serious. He orders Claire to quickly go and assess the damage, while he himself thinks that the adults still cannot afford such a wonderful uplift. Claire clearly replies yes and swiftly takes off from the spot. A little later, his team reports at the table. Donald says the port damage is minimal, no urgent repairs are needed. Even in facial expressions, a biased positivity is visible, smiles and a relieved appearance. They attribute this good result to Turner and Kirk for working within tight deadlines. Turner adds another pleasant piece of news. The farm also did not suffer noticeable damage. Kirk immediately shares his excitement. The light flickered. While he continued overseeing the recovery after the storm, one of the companions, engineer Wendell, approached him. Addressing him as Professor, she began reporting the results of her survey of the island, but her sentence was cut off. Oren accepted the drink she offered and thanked her for her kindness. Then her face became stern as soon as she presented the main point of the report. She had no doubt. A landslide event had occurred deep in the forest. They found a large area where many trees had fallen. That's right, he listened attentively, agreeing. The situation was indeed troublesome. If the path is blocked, Oren thought, it will definitely ruin their plans for further development on the island. Without any hesitation, he declared, they must immediately set out and survey the place. Their goal was a huge mountain, completely covered with dense forest. As soon as the group reached there, they were met by a scene of devastation. An entire stretch of forest was blocked by a chaotic pile of fallen trees and shifted earth, so Oren could not hold back and spoke of the terrible. While Claire Sandert impatiently called for help to clear the debris, Jacqueline stepped forward with a more thoughtful plan. She stated that she would use detection magic to survey the surroundings and asked Patricia to assist. Working in tandem, two mages drew a magical map of the island. Jacqueline explained that the landslide occurred due to soil that came down from the central mountain. She added that she did not sense any monsters in this area, so Oren found a reference point. Reassuringly, the relief was short-lived. Jacqueline replied that, on the contrary, the complete absence of monsters in such a vast forest was unusual. Oren considered her words and agreed that it was indeed abnormal. As soon as Jacqueline voiced her suspicion, Patricia intervened with an even more alarming revelation. She said she was not sure if it was related, but felt something brought a sensation she described as a gaping, empty hole hidden deep inside. In the forest, her strange description immediately captured Oren's attention until the end. Frightened, he sharply looked at Patricia and asked where exactly she managed to find the space. He comes to the conclusion nothing can be done. They will have to personally inspect the landslide site. Realizing that detection magic has its limits, Oren says everything they need must be confirmed by their own efforts. He, together with Patricia, breaks through the dense thickets, moving towards the place that is about to open. Suddenly, Patricia's voice cuts through the air. Having found the source, she calls the professor and everyone else to join her. Nearby before them, a huge dark maw has opened in the ground, an undeniable entrance to the dungeon. Patricia confirms this is definitely the empty space she felt and quickly concludes that the entrance was buried underground. It appeared only recently. Jacqueline notes, given the size of the island, the existence of a dungeon does not seem strange. Her companion, on the contrary, trembles with joy about the find and blurts out, "What is this? Supposedly some kind of..." To learn more, Oren calls Patricia, and she immediately confirms. He asks her to assess the dungeon. While Patricia focuses on her sensations, Jacqueline quietly mutters that she has never seen anything like this, something that goes deep. Patricia reports the results and her voice trembles tensely. The dungeon is so boundless that if detection magic continues to be active, one will start feeling dizzy. She summarizes, defeating it will most likely take too much time. A long pause. Hearing this, Elise asks about adventures. Patricia explains, in short, they are specialists in conquering dungeons. Oren's hint becomes obvious. He understands that they might have to throw such specialists at it. The chair stood before the gaping maw of the dungeon, weighing the colossal burden ahead. He voiced his conclusion aloud. For this very dungeon, they will not cope until they bring in a person or team with permission. Proven service record. In response to his assessment, Claire Sandert made a proposal. With a confident face, she asked about the recruitment of a specific man he had in mind. He confirmed that he had thought about the same thing himself. Nearby, Jacqueline, a witch with 1,000 faces, overheard their conversation and sharply widened her eyes in surprise at the coincidence. Then he named the person he wanted to contact and, smiling, said, "Let's go." Already, his proposal was met with incomprehension. Emu immediately asked again who he was talking about, and Patricia was left speechless. And the chronicle continues. Chapter 22, The Phantom Fifth. He stands next to his comrades, or someone quietly utters a name hanging in the air. Loretta. He glances sideways at Patricia and keeps his thoughts to himself. Neither he nor she nor the others have told this person anything about that person. The anxious expression on her face reveals everything. Patricia already understood that he is in a difficult state. Patricia, feeling the weight of every word, asks Blitz, "Is Loretta really an incredible person?" Blitz confidently nods and explains that he heard this name during a night mission by order. He adds, "She is known as the Phantom Fifth from the Golden Generation, and she carries the epithet Dragon Hunter Loretta." Jacqueline confesses her connections and says that Loretta was her former student. In her voice, deep pride. He became a traveler with a pseudonym, but immediately the main obstacle arises: no one knows where he is, or Jacqueline is simply stunned by the very idea of having such a cool nickname. He quickly makes a plan. The knowledgeable Glover might know where to look for Loretta. Jacqueline carefully considers his words, as if each one must decide the next step. With determination on his face, he declares that he will go alone and immediately makes a decision. He tells Blitz to acquire the nearest dungeon. Full equipment is needed, so first they need to get to the capital to prepare everything. Patricia snorts in surprise, and Claire Sandert steps forward, enthusiastically offers help to her professor, or accepting the support gratefully, only confirms that they are going together to the capital. As soon as they step into the bustling town, he suggests Claire visit the equipment shops while Glover finishes his work. She agrees without hesitation. Their shopping walk is torn apart by an aggressive scream, and he, throwing a cold glance into the void, aims with words, who he is and whether he wants to fight. The nervous-looking shopkeeper, the aggressor, is pressed to reality by Orange's sharp question. Will he really take money from travelers risking their lives? The shopkeeper begins to tremble, stammering and trying to justify himself and prove that he deserves payment for his goods. They and Claire Sandert watched as two armed guards caused a commotion. When a cheeky adventurer with spiky hair grabbed a sword from the shop and declared that it suits him better than someone who should lie and show off in such a neglected place. Claire whispered, "Displaying this in broad daylight is already too much." Oren, still feeling the unpleasant nature of the adventurer, warned Patricia in advance and tried to give her a chance to resolve everything peacefully, yet he spoke it out as soon as she stepped forward. Hands on hips, she sharply ordered the man to stop. The spiky-haired man turned, surprised by her appearance, and noted her impressive reflexes. She met him with a smile, boldly teasing, "Does the little girl want to fight against them?" His dark-haired partner picked up the conversation and also appreciated her, noting that she has a pretty face. Oren watched as the scuffle escalated, gaining momentum. His face showed no emotion. The contemptuous tone and words of the man ignited rage in Patricia. Immediately, Kyle Arnolord and how he persistently annoyed her at the academy came to mind. The memory brought a disgusting wave over her, and with it, determination vanished without a trace. From afar, Claire noticed visible annoyance flaring up in Patricia. Oren simply called her by name and with that, captured her attention. Then he calmly told Claire that she need not worry about Patricia. On the contrary, the men should be worried. That thug with spiky hair, understanding nothing, continued to mock and threw a remark that this little girl apparently looks embarrassed. In an instant, and Patricia moved. Steps that stunned everyone around pushed her. She ducked under the man's arm, grabbed the sword, and with all her might struck him in the stomach with the hilt. The blow threw the thug back so hard that during the fall he shattered the cobblestones to pieces. Sword in hand, and she froze in combat readiness. The blade held firmly as Patricia shifted her gaze to the second thief. A flash of light from an outstretched hand, and both travelers were magically bound. They fell to their knees, helpless like puppets without will. Then Patricia turned to the surprised shopkeeper and calmly said she was returning as merchandise, then simply said, "Thank you." The entire square froze in stunned silence. When the two bandits lay defeated, Claire could only stare in shock and whisper, "Amazing, who is this girl?" When the scuffle was settled, Patricia Grayson stood over two defeated travelers now bound and on their knees. She reports that they are being handed over to the Night Order, and one of the men lets out an irritated croak. Then Oren unfolds a broader picture. They received a message about a fugitive, a wanted criminal spotted in the capital. He adds that a reward has been set for the one who betrayed the great nation Geodes and sided with the enemy. Next, he sharply explains to Patricia as if to shock her. Because of this story, lawless adventurers have gathered in the district. And she is no less impressed. The order to take Sage Oren's head has indeed been issued. The beaten traveler then sharply shouts a challenge, a demand to listen. In a proud tone, he declares that their boss is none other than the dragon hunter, Loretta. The name struck Oren like a shock of recognition. His eye widened sharply as the memory began to surface. Loretta. Memory broadcasts again pull him back to the times when he was studying at the academy. Before his eyes appears Loretta, an unstable and powerful student, considered the biggest problem of the entire institution. Here she is in a fit of rage. In the memories, Oren approached the enraged student and spoke, saying he wanted to talk. Loretta, contemptuously curling her lips, muttered that some wise guy had an opinion about people like him and immediately shouted, "Oren, get lost." The memory shifts further to an example of his inevitable confrontation. Loretta lies depressed on the ground, and Niels calmly asks if she has calmed down yet. Then Oren throws a proposal to the defeated student. He admits, even though Loretta hardly attended classes, she has basic combat skills, so let her spar with fighters from Oren's class. Memory transfers to the student training grounds, and Oren finishes his point. He tells Loretta, if she thinks this idea is pointless, all the more reason to try, because he might gain something valuable from such experience. He stubbornly remembered that moment. On the academy grounds, he and Patricia Grayson stood watching as the muscular student Loretta approached them, determined, without any hesitation. Loretta issued a challenge, thundered an order for the special class losers to gather and face him all at once. Then she rushed forward and delivered a powerful right jab directly to Oren. Oren's head, the blow encountered a devastating force. Oren met it with a counterstrike, and Loretta flew away, while the rival, muttering curses, seemed to dissolve into the field with rubble. Later, Loretta withdrew. His back was turned to Oren and Patricia. They watched how he did it. Only this turned into a pattern. Day after day, Loretta returned and declared that it was time for a rematch, swearing this time he would win, but he was again crushed by defeat. Patricia even began to call him a loser for that other day. When he appeared again, Patricia whispered to Oren whether it would be another rematch. Then she turned around and, covering her mouth with her palm, quietly told the stubborn rival to stop being a co. Then, however, Loretta's approach was different. He stood before Oren, barely bowed his head, and shyly asked how to learn to be strong both in fencing and in magic. The sincere question caught Oren by surprise. Patricia looked on with an expression of awe. From the neighboring corridor, Carl Arnold noticed the unexpected oddity. In response to this newfound humility, Oren began to personally teach Loretta. He showed the correct sword techniques while Patricia watched the two training. The mentorship also extended to teaching. Oren and Patricia sat with Loretta in the library, among books, guiding him through subjects. Invisible to them, Carl Arnold peeked from above the stairs with such an expression. Indistinctly, he continues to immerse himself in the memory and recalls the moment when he confirmed Loretta's transfer. Then he told the young man, from tomorrow he would officially become part of his class. When Loretta asked if he was sure, Oren confirmed it without any pause. A month has passed since Loretta joined his class. Oren noticed how he was growing before his eyes. Lessons went smoothly, and the boy himself initiated help both in the academy's work and in the orphanage. Oren realized, studying Loretta had become a true key to his own strength, a sincere desire for change. And then he approached Loretta directly opposite and asked how his daily fencing training with Blitz was going, and also whether there was a future in this for his goal, to join the Night Order. Loretta was embarrassed by such straightforwardness, faltered mid-word, and muttered something reassuring. Oren explained to him that being close to friends is a consequence of the choices he himself made. Clearly moved, Loretta looked at his professor and thanked him for bringing him back to the right path after he got lost. A warm smile spread across Oren's face. He told Loretta that he knew the boy fought not just for nothing. He was looking for something that would spark change. As a teacher, Oren admitted how happy he was. He had to do just that. In response, Loretta's face lit up with a bright, sincere smile, and he confirmed Oren's words with a simple, truly touched yawn. Yes, but the memory deteriorated just a few weeks after that happy moment. Loretta provoked a bloody incident and was later expelled from the academy. The event happened about 2 days while Oren was absent from the academy on a business trip. He knew nothing about it until it happened. He had to relive the detailed memories when he returned and appeared before the academy, and it turned out that Loretta had already left. Then Kyle Arnalord approached him. He held a letter and explained that it was found on Loretta's desk, after which he asked if it was a farewell. "All right, the letter." His eyes widened as soon as he read the words addressed to him. In the letter, Loretta said that he would never be able to thank Oren enough for his guidance, but could no longer cause him any trouble. No more trouble. As he clung to the memory of Loretta's farewell letter, the whole story of that incident began to surface. An investigation conducted later revealed the truth. Loretta was helping a young girl who was being attacked by other boys from the academy. Those male students were sons of nobles. Fearing that this story would escalate and provoke the wrath of influential families, the academy administration decided Loretta would be made a thief, covering up for the sons of nobility. Hearing this story just now, detained and beaten Loretta barely made a deaf, distrustful sound. One of his masters, noticing this, scraped his boot on the stone floor and mocked, asking if he was scared now that the truth came out. The revelation hit Oren as if physically, and he screamed in shock. Patricia immediately intervened. "He is losing self-control. This must be a mistake. Let him listen more carefully." Meanwhile, Kyle Arnalord is stunned, and he understands Oren would never give such an order against Loretta. His composure falters as he stands over 2 captured hunters. He knows Patricia is right, but hearing how they grotesquely speak about Loretta is unbearable. It tears him apart. One of the thugs, looking up, admits there is no point in hiding anymore and asks if he is really the same sage Oren. From his place on the ground, Loretta throws a sinister challenge. In such a beaten state, he won't be able to handle him at all. He lowers his head. Patricia sharply orders the man to be silent, reminding him that this is an interrogation. Then one thug whispers to his partner he sees a perfect opportunity to just ask them. He agrees and immediately intervenes, addressing a question to Orina. He emphasizes the contradiction, reminding that he himself said Loretta would never go after him. "All right." In response, Loretta's gaze hardens while he speaks. He directly says that he has changed, and earlier he joyfully talked about his mentor, Orina, a revelation that leaves him stunned and becomes speechless. The first hooligan develops this topic further and tells the wise man that something is definitely wrong here. Loretta is now hunting Orina's head for a reward and then asks directly, does he know anything about the situation that might have happened? His shock fades, determination takes its place. He firmly states, as Loretta's former teacher, he cannot just abandon him. The battered bounty hunter snorts disdainfully at these words and explains that Loretta wants to be noticed by his current boss, and that this influential man will never give anything, especially in the future. Time of day. While Patricia anxiously watches and whispers his title, the bounty hunter freezes for a moment and only then reveals critically important information. Their base for operations is Zio's. His feet firmly step onto the stone path, and he understands, despite any obstacles, progress is impossible without a face-to-face meeting with Loretta. Gathering his strength, he agrees and announces the next move. They head to Zio's. Having handed the bandits over to the Night Order, Oren informed Grover about Loretta's situation. After that, he returned to the island to relay the same story to Blitz and others. And now, standing before his comrades, Oren explains, that is why he wants them, Loretta's old friends, to go with him to the city of Zio's, for which Grover has already arranged a carriage. His face darkens as the conclusion forms inside. Something has happened to Loretta. Hearing the news, Blitz and Ellis react with shock. Blitz mutters that it cannot be. The pumpkin woman calls Blitz's name anxiously. Oren, with a firm, determined expression on his face, declares that as Loretta's friend he must immediately rush to help. Jacqueline agrees the situation must be confirmed as soon as possible. She suggests when they leave the island at dawn tomorrow, they should set out. The news hits Blitz hard. He is especially close to Loretta, so it is hardest for him, and it seems he felt completely powerless when his friend left. As they prepare to depart, Oren apologizes to Elsa, Claire, and the local woman from the island, saying they have to endure his departures again and again. He entrusts them with the further development of the island, and they take on this responsibility without hesitation. Claire tells him not to worry and asks him to take care of Loretta. Elise adds her apologies, admitting their departure leaves a void in the development work so soon after their arrival. Wendell steps forward and confirms that he and the others are ready to take everything into their own hands. The astonished island resident throws her hands up and vows to make a grand discovery while everyone disperses, catching their confidence, whether in smiles. She assures he can safely leave matters in their reliable hands. Just as he was about to leave, a voice called out announcing that she wants to go with him, and in that same moment of surprise, he saw Patricia running full speed towards him. She looks at him with sincere concern and says she heard Zeos is a dangerous city, so she begs him to be careful. Warren looks back at her and quietly agrees. Now they are riding together in a carriage. Orrin explains to Patricia, Zeos is not the capital, so the security will not be too strict and the entry should go smoothly. But he immediately warns, this city attracts all kinds of people, so they need to keep their ears and eyes open. The map marks the route to the destination. Zeos, a northern morphic city of the kingdom of Galpad, located in a country bordering Estrada. He and his companions, Patricia and Jacqueline, finally arrive at the entrance to the northern city of Zeos. They manage to get there, and the harshly beaten-down building with a tense atmosphere immediately sets an anxious mood. Anu, he stretches the word, sweeping his gaze over the scene and confirms his suspicions. He had heard rumors about this city, but reality turned out to be even harsher than he had imagined. While Patricia was looking around, she noticed the sign of the Travelers Guild. Excitedly, she pointed her finger in its direction and suggested asking questions right there immediately. Orrin nodded. Their priority is to gather information about Loretta. The group entered the guild hall, a spacious room resembling a tavern, high ceiling, beams, and the clinking of mugs somewhere to the side. The adventurers scattered around the hall, some drinking, others whispering quietly. Before they could even recover, a man with spiky light hair and a scar on his cheek approached them. He looked down on them, curled his lips into a contemptuous smile, called them newbies, and offered to teach the local ladies carefully with just one touch. Orrin was about to ask for a moment of attention, but the man cut him off. Lustfully staring at Patricia and Jacqueline and laughing, he launched into comments about how they have very beautiful women with them. Loud laughter spread everywhere, and Orrin involuntarily tensed up. A normal conversation would not be possible. While the hooligan kept laughing, a knight in armor Blitz stepped forward. Calmly but firmly, he ordered the man to leave him alone. The aggressor abruptly turned around, and an expression of irritated incomprehension froze on his face. He extended his hand and placed it on the man's shoulder, beginning to say that from now on the group is under his protection. At that very moment, the bandit collapsed unconscious onto the wooden floor. Passers-by gasped in shock and began asking what had just happened. Blitz glanced at the fallen man and said dryly, "Probably he feels unwell, so let him sleep." When the commotion subsided a little, the dark-haired man who was sitting with the thug approached Orrin's group. He apologized for the sudden visit and said that he was also looking for a man named Loretta. Patricia, nearby, admitted with surprise. She barely managed to see what exactly the lightning-fast shoplets had managed to do and bring. The adventurer inhales sharply and his face immediately becomes serious. He warns the newcomers, in this town it's better not to mention the name Loretta because they are like strangers, they won't understand what's what here. His suspicion strengthens in his voice as if in proof. Looking intently at Orrin, he asks directly, "Did you come to Zeo to take Loretta's head?" Calmly, without unnecessary noise, he stops the man's fear. He explains, Loretta is his former student and those nearby are her friends and classmates. He confirms that they have business with Loretta but insists without options, they will definitely take him without carrying out the sentence, only retrieval. He looks the traveler straight in the eye and confirms they really know Loretta, and as if in passing, adds, lying to him is a habit he does not have. The traveler seems to freeze, digesting the new information. At that very moment, another man steps forward with long dark hair and a goatee. He introduces himself as Garrett and says that he was once in the same adventuring party as Loretta. He offers to tell them everything he knows. Now, sitting together with Orrin's group, Garrett begins his story. He speaks firmly, without any doubts. In all the years of the traveler, he has never met a person better than Loretta. This statement shocks Orrin. If Loretta really was such a good person, then why does he ask why is everyone in this town so afraid of him? His story, the first traveler, lays out the timeline. About half a year ago, Loretta took an individual order in another guild to tame a large creature. He was a strong warrior, so everyone decided that he would be fine and sent him away. Then he pressed him with several more questions, clarifying whether Loretta and Zio's had become worse than those nasty adventurers. Harry confirmed. Loretta returned to the town almost a month ago, and he brought with him the same characters and not weak ones at all. With this, he ended his story with a gloomy look. Loretta, who had returned, seemed like a completely different person, a cruel, wild scoundrel who now looks at people as expendable material, nothing more. As soon as Harry finished explaining how Loretta keeps everyone in fear, Oren's hand clenched near his side. In this city, adventurers could no longer do anything without his permission, and the situation was truly terrible. Horror. On the other side of the table, Harry could not contain his disappointment. He admitted that he had no idea how everything would turn out. He honestly confessed that he never managed to ask which guild had sent the request for submission. Place. A woman with glasses on her head thanked him for the information, and with the new details, she concluded, they have no choice but to talk directly to Loretta themselves. She immediately asked where Loretta could be found. Garrett explained, Loretta has been exploring the dungeon in the east for several days, and he himself only watches from afar above. After all, his adventurer subordinates do everything. The word subordinates hit Oren right in the heart. He remembered that old Loretta, whom he knew, could not stand this term. Garrett confirmed. Loretta said the same during his first visit when he had just entered the city. His determination only grew stronger. Either he declared he would do everything in his power. Garrett leaned back gloomy and said, as a former comrade, he at least wants to understand the reason for such a radical shift in Loretta. Seeing his determination, Garrett asked, will you find out? Then he described the place, a stone entrance carved into a grassy hill. It was in the east dungeon. Later, deep inside the dungeon, Oren, Blitz, and the woman in goblin attire rushed through a corridor blocked by fallen bat-like monsters. Blitz noticed they had been walking for an hour and had only encountered intermediate-level creatures so far. The woman nodded. They still had not seen the end of the path in this endless past. Message. Somewhere in the dungeon, Jacqueline told Elise that this place is quite large, at least judging by what she managed to hear. Realizing that time cannot be wasted, she announced. She will use detection magic to narrow down B. She stumbles, frowns as if concentrating on something invisible. Oren, noticing her tension, asks what happened. She simply replies, her magical power will not gather. The reason becomes instantly clear as Oren surveys the cave. The walls are covered with crystalline formations of monosealing magic organ. He immediately understands why magical manipulations here are so complex. Jacqueline reproaches herself for carelessness, while Elise notes the rarity and incredible quantity. They are also worried about something else. So far they have not encountered either Loretta or any of his henchmen, and it is unclear whether the appearance of that man from the ceiling is the reason why Loretta's group chose this dungeon as their base. After all, he neutralizes mages. Their opponent, having hired him, took one of fight. Oren suggests Loretta's squad might want to lead them into a trap. With a focused gaze, he declares if they try to engage, they will fight. At that moment, the company hits a dead end. Elise catches vibrations in the ground, and Jacqueline reports, someone is approaching. About 20. From the darkness ahead emerges a large group of armed men. Their leader grins boldly and points. The equipment in their group is still unscratched clean as new. He disdainfully calls them rookie adventurers who didn't even flinch, then smugly rubs his jaw. There haven't been such for a long time. Huge catch, the gang leader elaborates. They make money by hunting newcomers like those standing nearby now. Smirking crookedly, he slyly adds, he is already waiting to talk with the two most promising women in the group. While he demands their valuables, Blitz steps forward and asks Oren to let him take control of the situation. The leader snorts at the knight who is pretending to be defender before Blitz can engage in battle. Oren bursts from his place with blinding speed. The gang leader is knocked aside. A groan of pain escapes his lips as the blow lands where he didn't even have time to realize. Blitz freezes, stunned by the sudden, ruthless efficiency of his professor. Oren stands over the fallen and calmly cuts off. There is no need to restrain those who so openly declare their intent to cause harm. One of the fallen comrades' face twisted with rage shouts in defiance. He swears Oren will not escape what maims them. His threat breaks off. In a smooth, merciless motion, sharp turns and cuts strikes two more thugs, and their bodies spatter blood as they. The rest of the members can only freeze in horror while Oren stands motionless among the bodies of his fallen comrades. His blades have already frozen in the shadow. He quietly let out a soft chucklino expression on his face. The survivors, though clearly confused, try to maintain a brave appearance. One of them stated that they still have a numerical advantage and warned the boy not to get under the blade. As the thugs turned into fighting stances, Jacqueline stepped forward beside Oren and declared that from now on she would fight alone. Oren, worried about the low ceiling, asked if it was fine. She confidently said that for her level it takes very little time to get used to the effects, and now she can use magic without any problems. Blushing slightly, she added that she would not allow only the professor to look good or for her readiness to be ignored, realizing that her help W. From afar, at a safe distance, Blitz and Eliz decided not to get into the fight itself. Blitz said that when two combat specialists take everything upon themselves, one can breathe out. Eliz agreed, wishing them luck, and really called their group fans. After the fight began, the cave exploded with movement. Oren and Jacqueline moved as one, his blade a silver streak, her magica destructive force that cut down the rest of the mercenaries with ruthless precision. In a moment the fight ended. Blitz said they managed to break away from the attackers. Eliz confirmed, and Oren just watched thoughtful. He admitted, the fencing and magic that Blitz and Jacqueline showed are truly weapons. His reflection broke off as soon as a figure appeared near the entrance to the dungeon. A muscular young man with spiky hair smiled and said that a lot of time had passed and that he was glad to finally see them. Blitz, Oren, and Jacqueline froze in shock, and Blitz staggered and stammered, shouting the name Loretta. Before the dark entrance to the cave, a sturdy young man with spiky light hair addresses Oren and his companions, thanking them for coming. He names Blitz, Jacqueline, Wendell, Eliz separately, and finally Professor Oren. Loretta's husband smiles crookedly and says that, supposedly, he heard rumors about Oren and how others have already left Giades. Danny, he says, was brought to him by his own impressive network, and finally adds, he is glad to see that everyone is fine. His gaze sharpens into a predatory smile as he bluntly states, prey that resists is far more worthy of being hunted. Loretta shifts her gaze to Blitz and shows that the attackers who attacked them earlier were sent only to test their strength. Once the assessment is made, he proclaims, now ready to take the heads of Golden Generation and Sage. Eliz replies that he quickly grasps everything, correctly guesses his planto hand over their heads to Giades. Loretta confirms her suspicion and warns, those adventurers now with him are much more formidable than the previous group. He describes everything with boasting and insists that his troops are all veterans from well-known parties, so the battle with them will be significant. With a condescending smile, he advises them to surrender quietly, hinting that Giades will show them no mercy anyway. While the threat of Loretti still hangs in the air, Blitz steps forward with a determined face. He tells Professor Oren that he understands the situation and asks to be allowed to handle the fight himself. Loretta scoffs at the knightly bravado and calls him a fool. Blitz sharply glances back, his face frozen in a mask of icy composure, and he mutters an insult back to his opponent. Oren's eyes narrow, silently pondering who is really the fool here. Loretta loses patience, sharply thrusts her hand forward and babbles a command. But a moment later his armor warriors rush into attack, weapons raised to strike Oren. The attack ends before it even begins. In an instant, Loretta's warriors are disarmed and thrown to the ground. Loretta stands frozen, staring into the voidgeable to believe it, stammering from confusion. And now he stands nearby, calmly asking what happened to his former bravado, mocking him, as if to say he caught himself the name Dragon Hunter Loretta cry. He fixed his gaze on the traveler, who grimaced in annoyance and clenched his teeth. Oren calmly asked if there was any reason he couldn't strike with full force. Nearby, Jacqueline confirmed to Wendell that the magical pattern she had just seen was undoubtedly Loretti's. His analysis continued. He explained that every person's magical power has unique contours and magical pattern. Coldly and confidently he cut off, saying that this man was not Loretta, and he recalled the moment when Blitz squeezed the lyre. It was then that Oren felt two different magical patterns sewn over the other, like camouflage. Then he turned to Eliza and continued speaking. He was considering both amnesia and mind control, but this discovery finally put everything in its place. He also said that the imposter had made one fatal mistake. That mistake, he clarified, was caused by the imposter's confidence, as if he had a red thing in their group and that bullets were still hitting it at full force. Now it was a deadly false assumption. In all battles before this, Blitz had used only a crumb of his true power. Oren continued the explanation. Even if the imposter perfectly imitated Loretta's appearance, voice, and magical pattern, he could never copy memories. Loretta, Blitz's best friend, would never make such a mistake or miss his true power. Wendell realized this. Lies turned his behavior upside down, and, for the first time, Oren truly got angry. His companions sensed a change in the atmosphere, saw that Blitz was by no means in good spirits. Jacqueline admitted it was frightening. Elise added, the very existence of this imposter Blitz more than any own would not be forgiven. Ahead, across the clearing, Blitz stood ready against the man who stole his friend and assumed his identity. For him, this was the cruelest possible insult. At the silent command, the usurper ordered his men not to hold back and to rush at Blitz with the entire crowd to overwhelm and defeat him. The rescuers surged forward, but Blitz became a continuous mirage of movement, cutting through their ranks with ominous speed, tearing everything apart with force and precision. While the usurper was still trying to understand what was happening, his entire squad had already been neutralized and he froze, staring at the carnage in complete disbelief. Oren stands over the fallen imposter, sword held at the ready. What's wrong? Is it really all over? He asks coolly. He sees. He should have foreseen this, but the imposter can only falter into incoherent silence, not believing what has happened. Continuing his mocking tirade, Oren addresses the man as Mr. Fake and sarcastically notes that he hired a skilled mage for his deception. Then, now and then, he calls out into the surrounding trees. From the trees emerge Jacqueline and Elise. Jacqueline immediately examines the quality of the illusion. It is a high-level spell that copied not only the target's face and voice but even her magical pattern. And she admits, even she almost managed to fully. While the imposter desperately insists that he is the real Loretta, Jacqueline's own magic works. She declares her forced dispel magic, the illusion shatters in all directions, then mercilessly cuts in. His performance is already starting on Slip. Slip is completely broken and the imposter's true face bloodied appears in the light. He furiously curses his own defeat. Oren, now flanked by Jacqueline, calmly says that it's time to explain everything. Bound in chains and on his knees, the man admits defeat. Checkmate, he mutters before naming himself Franklin, a mediocre, nameless adventurer. Unlike the legendary Loretta, he pretended to be her. Franklin's confession unfolds in a flashback a month ago. The Travelers Guild and the receptionist smilingly praises his skill, saying that for someone so young, he is still just a novice. Being him, and the memory continues. Late that night, he flies out of the building, limping, grumbling that he drank too much. Next to dark alley, a mysterious figure in a white hooded cloak approaches him and says she has a request regarding an adventure named Loretta in the presentive scroll. As an incentive, she promises Franklin Loretta's life. Returning to the present, the imprisoned Franklin finishes reading his story and tells Oren, the real Loretta has already gone to the client's city. He continues the confession. The mysterious mage who hired him used magic to transform him into Loretta. The condition was that he lure Oren's group here and capture them. Oren, with a blank expression, asks what the mastermind looked like. Franklin, still on his knees, admits the man's face was wrapped in rope, so he did not see him and has not seen him since he took on this guise. Guys, hearing this, Patricia pieces together the entire timeline. She says, for an adventurer, it's not unusual to spend months in a dungeon hunting monsters. And she concludes, there is a high probability that the real Loretta is still in the city. When the group draws this reliable opportunity into itself about Doral, Franklin mercilessly breaks the gloomy mood with one statement. He says, if they are asking him, then it is already too late for Loretta. Patricia lets out a cry of disbelief, and Franklin, with a cold, serious face, shows the reason for his pessimism. The Endoral monster is an underground creature that burrows through the earth. A creature that lives deep underground and almost never comes into sight of ordinary people. But it is incredibly fierce. When underground food supplies run out, it attacks settlements. A Class S monster, the highest rank, an enemy even first-class adventurers will find hard to deal with. Defeat, or at least that was how the terrible news sounded in all the processes. Realizing that the main mastermind is truly hunting for Loretta's life, he quickly makes a plan. As soon as they hand Franklin and his followers over to the Night Order, they will immediately head to Doral because, as he remembers, it is not far from their commandant's time. In this city, his determination meets mockery. Franklin says they are far too optimistic for planning at least to cover Loretta. And he adds, even someone of Loretta's level would already be dead, given the earth-digging attack. And he calmly, without any doubts, denies it. This will not happen. When Franklin demands to know where such confidence comes from, Oren explains, Loretta is the type of man who does not die even if he dies. Their years together became the basis of this trust. Franklin snorts as if he really hasn't seen a single corpse, but still he tried. Warren, he looks down at the fallen and gives the last advice. He tells Franklin that everyone carves their own life, not steals someone else's, and warns, do not make the wrong choice. Again a choice, the scene changes and pushes us into darkness, into the rocky void of the doors. Doral Dungeon. Near the entrance to Doral Dungeon, Oren declares that their only way is to move inside. Next to him, Patricia in glasses pushed them up on her forehead and agreed, adding, "If the confession of the imposter Franklin is true, Loretta must be." Here nearby, Elise immediately notices, taking on the underground earth-digging dragon alone to protect the city is exactly what the selfless Loretta would do. Blitz quickly agrees and confirms, Loretta belongs to those who fight alone, not risking in vain so that others also get into trouble. Wounded, Jacqueline barely manages to enter the dark caves and takes the lead. She tells the group that thanks to her detection magic and the scale of the dungeon they are already approaching the deepest point, but warns everyone, be ready for battle. Oren narrows his gaze and his eyes narrow as if he already hears the threat. Her warning really turns out to be timely. Ahead roars such a roar that the air rings. The whole company shudders from the sound. Oren instantly realizes that it is coming from inside and shouts to them not to. They stood but rushed forward, tracking the source of the commotion, a giant dragon undermining the earth. Everything around unfolds until he lets out another mighty roar from the depths. To the cave, as soon as Oren surveys the beast with his gaze, his eyes widen. Opposite stands a figure. Loretta holds her position, clutching a huge weapon in her hands. There is no mistake. Patricia, catching the unwavering courage of her friend, smiles with relief that he is not. Let's look again at Loretta, unyielding, ready to stand. He thinks, this is the real Loretta, the very person who will stand against the dragon digging the earth without